lot of emphasis also on how the healthcare industry and system needs to be brought together there. And as the main gist of it, if I'm correct, is, get the opinion from the healthcare professionals. They are the experts, and then implement it with law. Don't let the lawyers try and decide what's best for the kids that are not qualified. We had a great response from attendees from the countries. As I said, a plethora of various different careers also covered. We received literally hundreds of questions before the webinar, during the webinar, and hundreds after it as well. What we have therefore decided to do is to try, and we can't obviously get through that many questions, but what we've tried to do is to group them into 5 different areas, which Dorcy will touch on us first of all, and then later on in the schedule today, around about 6:25, we're hoping to have a live question and answer session when both Dorcy and Dr. Childress will be available to answer your questions. So firstly, let me introduce the top 5 questions. If you like, sounds like I'm introducing something top of the pops or something, a music billboard thing, but the top 5 questions are, number 1 most asked question, the authentic voice of the child being heard in the courts. How do we know that that voice is authentic? And is it the voice of the child we're after, or the choice of the child? Interesting question.
Love that.
Number 2, children over the age of 12 are considered to be somewhat mature overnight by the courts, and therefore some feel that they are being abandoned by the system on the basis that they are now kind of qualified to have their own voice, but should they have their own choice? Number 3, practical solutions for treatment and reunification between alienated parents and children of all ages. Dorcy, that's your speciality, your area. I'm not even going to go there. I know you'll handle that with great aplomb. And number 4, prevention, early intervention, and the role of the child and the family agencies. So Tusla Kafkas here and various other bodies around the world. And one of the most important questions that we've been asked, and this comes up again and again and again, and it's one to which we have no answer. So we'd be absolutely delighted, Dorcy and Dr. Childress, if you can help us with this one. And this is where parental alienation is being used by an abusive parent as a strategy to win the custody battles and extend the abuse. So with that, I'd like to warmly welcome our second guest speaker, Dorcy Pruter, who is the CEO and founder of Conscious Co-Parenting Institute, who will talk today of her expertise in providing active solutions to recovery, and we'll be very interested in hearing about those, from the complex trauma of parental alienation and restoring self-authenticity and healthy attachment bonding to parents. Dorcy, you're very, very welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I'm a little nervous. So many important people on the call today, and I feel like it's exciting to follow Dr. Childress, and also nerve-wracking because he's an amazing speaker and provided such awesome content yesterday. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for participating and for having me here. I will share my PowerPoint and as a visual aid, and most of what I do will be talking about solution today from all levels of the family dynamic. So not just from when it's beginning. So for the mediators and people that are just starting out in the family divorce process or separation process, solutions there all the way through to the high road and adult children that are grossly ignored, unfortunately, in this space, and mostly because people just don't know what to do. And so I hope I can provide as much value as I possibly can for you guys today and for the practitioners. I hope that you implement the strategies that I am teaching you today. It's not as hard as you think, and we've been led down a path that has created a massive crevasse in this family dynamic dynamic from problem to solution. So hopefully today we bridge that gap and we bring everybody together in a unified voice. So I'm going to tee up my PowerPoint and get started. Give me 1 second. Okay. So, parental alienation, the solution for the pathology known as parental alienation. And I say that in quotes because most of you who were on the call yesterday or who have been following Dr. Childress's work for a while understand that parental alienation is not a diagnosable pathology. However, it is an urban term that we all know and understand. So I'm going to use it in my presentation today. And at the Conscious Co-Parenting Institute, we are focused on solutions of this global epidemic known as parental alienation. And I would like for today, for those of you who don't know how to solve it, that today is the day that you commit to being the change agent in your community and the solution-focused practitioner that says no more of this pathology, and that you're willing to really step up and solve this family dynamic in your local community. So Dr. Childress frequently says it's always in the child's best interest to fix things. So in other words, if there's a breach in a relationship between a parent and a child, it needs to be repaired sooner rather than later, always. So I'm going to share with you solutions that I've shared with other mental health providers and legal professionals through the past several years. I've really been doing this work since 2006. Dr. Childress and I have spoken several times together. We started, or we presented to mental health providers and lawyers at the AFCC conference in 2017. As you can see here in this image, we presented at the APA conference, the solution, an evidence-based solution, the high road at the APA in 2019. So it's not new. We've been talking about this for a long time. And as Dr. Childress talks about, the solution is really anchored in already accepted constructs of psychology. I'm not a psychologist. I am a coach and a mediator and a businesswoman. And while Dr. Childress says that a lot, there's an important piece of understanding why being a businesswoman has really also helped me provide a solution to this family dynamic known as parental alienation. Because most mental health providers and legal professionals don't know what they're looking at when they're looking at this family dynamic or when they're reviewing evidence, they don't know what the phenomenon is or how to solve it. If they do know about parental alienation, they may be using the old construct of Richard Gardner and sort of loosey-goosey trying to figure out, is it this or is it that? And Richard Gardner, as Dr. Childress has said, has taken us off into the wilderness and created a new form of pathology, and it's created chaos and confusion in the family court system and in the mental health community. And that's rippled out into the families. And it's really rippling from the core of the trauma in the family lineage all the way back to the beginning of time to today. And so when we look at the solution and what we do at the Conscious Co-Parenting Institute, we're really focusing on the core of the issue, which is the trauma or the transgenerational trauma that Dr. Childress mentioned yesterday that's rippling through the family line. And my purpose as a human on this planet is to really illuminate the path to purpose for others and to really illuminate where the blocks are, right? So the path to purpose oftentimes is blocked with roadblocks or giant boulders, if you will, which are our traumas, little micro and macro traumas from our childhood and our past, our family lineage. So in families where one or both parents are pathogenic, this happens. We actually work with families where both parents have pathology. Both parents may actually be guilty of allowing their anger to impact the child's relationship with the other parent. But oftentimes in this case, in these family cases, that's not the case. It's usually one pathogenic parent who is stirring the pot and everybody sort of falls in. It's triggering the pathology or the little micro traumas in the other parent's brain, in the system, in the professionals, and everybody is triggered by the pathology. And so we really look at how do you solve this and how do you stop the triggering in all of the different micro traumas in the brains of all of the people involved. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit later in my presentation. So parental alienation, it's the end of an era. We are ending the parental alienation as we know it. In the simple terms, parental alienation is a term, an urban term that was created by Richard Gardner to really describe the pathology of when a parent attempts to undermine the relationship with the child and the other parent. That's just a simple term. All of us know that. That's a very basic level. Because children are suggestible, many will eventually succumb to the pressure of a pathogenic parent towards the targeted parent, and they will feel forced to choose a side. When a child aligns with a pathogenic parent, they become the representative of the pathology, and they have an agenda, and they become aggressive, oftentimes hateful and rejecting towards their targeted parent. And the child experiences an emotional cutoff from a normal range parent, and that often spills over into the extended family and friends. And this has a profound negative impact on the child emotionally and psychologically for the rest of their life. And we cannot allow this emotional cutoff to happen and to stay breached for a long period of time. And unfortunately, as all of us know, this has been happening for decades, and mental health providers and legal professionals haven't been able to solve it. And the truth is, a solution exists. So there are many ways to prevent. So one of the questions was, how do we prevent it from the beginning? And we're going to talk about that today. And then what do we do with the families that are already in the family court system and all of the struggle and chaos that's ensued around that, and including all the professionals? And then what do we do with the families that have already experienced a long-standing emotional cutoff? We must speak in a unified voice, okay? This is critical. Dr. Childress has been saying this for over a decade. I'm saying it. It is true. We can no longer operate with two paradigms. The old paradigm is done. It's over. It no longer exists. You need to scrap it and toss it in the trash. That old paradigm creates the chaos. It's a red herring that is used in the family court system to say, look over here, while I continue to abuse the children over here. So one of the concerns is that people are using, pathogenic parents are using parental alienation as an excuse to continue to abuse children. I'm going to talk to you guys today about how to get to the bottom of things quickly in the family dynamic so that you understand what's happening and who's causing it. Is it mom, dad, or both? And if it's both, what to do about it? If it's mom, what to do? And if it's dad, what to do? It's not about elimination, it's about integration. Our goal is to not eliminate anyone. Family is family, period. Children have one mom and one dad forever. And even if they remarry, they split and remarry, then they have a bonus mom and a bonus dad, okay? There is no replacement of mom and dad. Children love both of their parents, and they deserve to receive love from both of their parents, and they love both of their parents, even if their parents are abusive. This is a fact, okay? I know that's controversial, but children love their parents, and they want the abuse to stop. So I'm going to talk about how to recognize that and how to eliminate these situations where we're eliminating parents and actually learn to integrate them. All right, many target parents start to view their child as an alienator because they buy into the narrative that the child is independently creating their own scenarios, and how horrible the target parent is to be accepted by the alienating behaviors of the child. So the truth is, parents start to believe this because they are so destabilized by the pathology, and because the child is acting out and nobody understands what's going on, the targeted parents often start acting out. They start reacting to what's happening. They either come full force or they disappear. And it is because this belief, this limiting belief, this story, this lie, that people believe that their child is bad. There's no such thing as a bad child. There isn't. Sometimes there's bad behavior. Behavior can always be changed, okay? So many parents start to view their kids as the alienator as well, and oftentimes will reject their children because their children are rejecting them. Of course, this is normal, and it happens because targeted parents are completely destabilized by the system that is not serving them, that blames them, and really pushes on to the targeted parents the responsibility to solve this pathology. Now, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The targeted parent is actually responsible for solving it, but not from a perspective that you think or that they've been forced to do. So I'm going to talk about how to help empower the targeted parent, which I believe is the chosen parent. I coined the phrase the chosen parent back in 2017, and I really truly believe that the targeted parent is really a chosen parent. The child has chosen that parent because they know that they're the one who's going to lift the family out of the pathology. So I wanted to participate today because I have a lot of knowledge and wisdom about the solution, firsthand knowledge and wisdom about the solution, because I've been doing this for over a decade, almost or 15 years now, of recovering families and children and reuniting severely alienated kids that have had emotional cutoffs sometimes for decades with their left behind chosen parent. So when parents divorce, often both parents struggle with their parenting at their foundation, and it's rocked because of the trauma of the marital relationship ending. So this happens with all parents when a trauma, a split happens. They bear down on their children unconsciously. They toss all their parenting skills out the window because they are focused in their trauma on the micro trauma of the divorce. So it could be a micro or macro trauma depending on how the parents divorce. But when it happens, the parents momentarily bear down on their kids. They toss their parenting out the window. Now, a normal range parent will find their footing fairly quickly and get back into like, oh yes, I'm a parent, and start to parent their kids again in normal range. Pathogenic parents struggle and frequently remain unstable. So they start to spin because they're triggered based on the trauma of their childhood. So it could be a micro or macro trauma of their childhood, but the divorce is an event, a decision-forming incident, if you will, that's triggering something from their childhood. So they start to spin. And it's really a chemistry thing. Their emotional brain starts to produce cortisol, floods their body. Their body is spinning in the cortisol spin zone. And normal people, you can regulate your cortisol in 15 to 20 minutes, but pathogenic parents often will spin in cortisol for a really, really long time. And when they're spinning, they just keep getting re-traumatized and re-traumatized. They have an unresolved trauma, and they are triggered by the separation or the divorce, or it could be something else. So things could be going okay, and then the targeted parent might remarry or something else might happen that trigger the pathogenic parent to become unstable. Pathogenic parents, when they get triggered by many, many different things, they frequently use that as an opportunity to alienate, both consciously and unconsciously. So it's not their intention sometimes, but it's their pathology. It's the way their brain is wired. And so they start to spin. And then everybody else around them, including the children, react to the pathology in the parent. The pathogenic parent can easily be triggered into that unresolved trauma from their childhood, just like I said, and that manifests into projections into their current family system. Now, Dr. Childress talks about this transgenerational trauma, and I'm just going to touch on it here just as a framework because somebody may only be watching this presentation, and I want to make sure that they have the foundation of what we're talking about as we dive into solution. So if this goes unresolved, it will escalate into a full-blown emotional cutoff and between the child and a normal range parent or the targeted chosen parent. And when this happens, the child will need to be protected, okay, from the pathological abuse or psychological abuse of the pathogenic parent. And I don't want to spend a lot of time here. I just want to frame up the understanding of the basis of which this family dynamic is created and what is the triggering events or the trigger event that causes the pathology to trigger in a parent. So sometimes a parent can seem pretty normal range, and pathogenic people, they operate in normal society everywhere. And so we need to learn how to live with and connect with people that are pathogenic. They're everywhere. They're in our schools, they're in our governments, they're in our homes sometimes, they're in the grocery store, they're in our workplace, they're everywhere. And oftentimes they don't even realize they are suffering from a pathology. And oftentimes they are stuck. Well, they're stuck in their victim mindset. Sometimes their pathology lays dormant and gets triggered in a divorce or separation or an event that brings it on. I just want to say quickly, not all families who are experiencing a pathology need a full protective separation. So it depends on when you catch it and the targeted parent's ability to learn and implement skills to recover their child. And you as the practitioner's ability to teach those skills to both of the parents and the child. One of the things that sets us apart from most people or most programs or I guess classes and things that people that work with this family dynamic is that we look at a whole family problem requires a whole family solution. And we also look at this as teaching the child how to be in relationship with both parents. So it sets us apart from most people because most people focus on a problem and not a solution. And most people focus on the child, but not teaching the child, but victimizing the child. And I want to teach you how to elevate the child appropriately with their authenticity, the authentic voice of the child, which was one of the questions, the authentic voice, what does that look like? And how you can recognize that in the child and how you know when the authentic child is not in the room, when the authentic child is not speaking, when the inauthentic child is speaking. So we'll talk about that today. So let's dive in, shall we? Solutions for the pathology known as parental alienation, prevention at the early stages. I want to start by talking about prevention because most of the time we do these presentations or we talk about parental alienation, people are only talking about the cases where there's a full emotional cutoff and they don't know what to do when the family is starting out or they're starting to see the symptomology. What do they do in the beginning? So I want to talk about prevention because the practitioners on here, you have a tremendous opportunity when you start working with the family to prevent the pathology from escalating to a full-blown cutoff. You actually can do this and it's easier than you think. So I know some of you are like, oh, maybe you've never worked with these people. I've worked with thousands of families. I know that prevention in the early stages starts with education, and it is really, really critical that you learn the proper process and understand what's happening so that you can educate from the beginning and prevent the need for a high road. I look forward to the day that there isn't a need for a protective separation and a high road workshop. I really do. I really believe that that is possible. And it's possible if you guys as the practitioners step up and resolve this by preventing it in the beginning. So prevention requires education at the early stages, and this is designed really for divorce abuse prevention. So the first thing is really to provide parents with skills necessary to make child-focused decisions. This seems basic and simple, and it seems like, yeah, we get that, but how many people are actually doing that? How many practitioners, how many of you are actually educating your clients in the beginning on what it means to have a child-centered divorce versus a child in the middle divorce? How are you teaching the parents skills? And listen, I'm a coach and a mediator, so I understand that skills are really critical, and coaching is different than therapy. Oftentimes, by the time they come to a therapy session, or they hire a therapist, they're working on a problem. They keep looking backward, and you're trained to look backward. And looking back is important because you need to understand the foundation, and we'll talk about that. But the importance of moving the family forward is skill building for prevention. So even if they're starting to experience some of the alienating behaviors, you can start teaching these skills to the parents on how to prevent this from escalating. And if you have the opportunity, which I think a lot of you do, to work with the kids, teaching the kids the skills is really critical, and we'll talk about that. So parents learn that their behaviors and choices will determine how their child will ultimately adjust to the divorce. Okay. A divorce is a micro trauma. Okay. The separation of the parents is a traumatic event for the children as a micro trauma. It only becomes a macro trauma depending on how the parents handled the divorce. Okay. So, or separation, you don't have to be divorced. So it is a micro trauma, even when you have multiple children. So if you have one child and a couple years later you bring another child into the world, that's a micro trauma for the child. The child who's been your whole universe for a couple of years all of a sudden has to share you with this other new being that's come into their life. It's a micro trauma. How you handle that creates the difference between a micro and a macro. Okay, so same thing here, the separation. Is it a micro or a macro? Micro traumas, micro events, decision forming incidents, those are things that you can clean up and help educate the child as it's happening versus creating a macro that has to be dealt with later on. So our classes are designed to really educate parents about children's issues in divorce. And we really focus on the child and how they respond to divorce and how the parent's behavior impacts the child, because the child is the one who's really bonding the family together. And so parents, if they don't get it right and they're bearing down and they don't lift up on the child is spinning, right? The child is now trying to parent up to one or both of the parents. And so we want parents to really understand how the child at different stages, how they are actually perceiving the divorce, and how the parent's behavior impacts how the child is perceiving the divorce and how they can shift. So for parents here, if you're doing something some way, don't worry, you can always change your behavior. It can always be changed. It's never too late. So child-centered, meeting the needs of the child, being preventative in the beginning and having the parents role model can quickly help you detect as a practitioner who is causing the problem. And from there, you can teach the skills to really prevent the escalation of the pathology. So when you are working with these families, really understanding and role modeling the skills will actually help you flush out who's doing what. And you can do this in the beginning when you're skilled and you learn this, it becomes second nature for you. You start to see it everywhere, by the way, and you can start to really eliminate the pathology in the family dynamic by teaching these skills. So pathogenic parents can be very crafty, and they're really good at hiding what they're doing by showing up in therapy and making statements like, I want the child to have a relationship with the other parent. I want the other parent to just do what they're supposed to do. They need to figure it out. And oftentimes there's this, unforgivable event, or there's this illusion of that. And parents and professionals, targeted parents or chosen parents and professionals are left to try to figure out what's happened. And so it becomes this guessing game. So being preventative will really help the parents get out of that guessing game and help you as the practitioner remain in the role of leader, right? You're leading the family out of the pathology. Child-centered divorce skills really involve teaching many, many different things, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but you're going to want to explain how conflict and trauma harms children. It's important that you understand this so that you can explain it to the clients. They need to know what's happening for the child and give them the warning signs so that they can become aware. It's like when you buy a new car, right? When you first buy a new car, you think you're getting the only one in that color, and the next thing you know, the car is everywhere on the road. Every other car looks like your car. Is this the same thing with explaining to parents how conflict and trauma harms children? So you need to know as practitioners, if you're a mental health provider, if you're a coach, if you're a mediator, if you're a family law attorney, have material for your clients to help them understand how their conflict, how the parental conflict and the trauma is harming their kids. And then help parents really to create a conflict resolution strategic plan when conflict happens. Help them create it before it happens so they know what to do when it does happen. And there are tons of conflict resolution models. We use a problem pyramid so that we help the parents understand like who's causing what, whose problem is it to solve. If it's the child, how to teach the child the skills. The goal is not for the parent or the family to be dependent on you. The goal is to teach them to solve their own problems so that they can do it on their own. You don't want them to have to keep running back into court and keep running back into your office. And by the way, for those of you who are like, oh, you don't know, these pathogenic parents can't learn, that's simply not true. I don't believe that. And you shouldn't either. If you believe that, you're actually creating the pathology or influencing the pathology. You're creating a belief system that they can't do it. It's not true. They absolutely can. We must believe in their ability to do the work and to learn the skills. Everybody can. Educate parents on how divorce impacts children. Micro traumas can become macro traumas if they're not handled properly in the beginning. And even if they're not handled properly in the beginning, they can start wherever they are. Okay. Children love both parents. Children deserve to receive and give love from both parents. This is fundamental. You must understand this in your practice. You must understand this, okay? Children love both parents, period, okay? Not sometimes, maybe not, or the parent is abusive, they don't love them. No, they love their parents. Children love abusive parents. They do. I know that's controversial. People don't want to believe it. It's true. They love both of their parents. They don't love the abuse. They want the abuse to stop, but children love both of their parents. Children want their abusive parent to stop abusing them. Children frequently ally with their abusive parent. You can talk to people that work in foster care. You can talk to practitioners that recover families and deal with kids in foster care with all kinds of abuse, and they will tell you that they cover up for their abuser. Alienated children are children that are being psychologically abused. They ally with their abusive parent in the pathology because they are parenting up. Okay, they are parenting up to the pathological, psychologically abusive parent. They're allied with an abusive parent. They love that parent. They're rejecting a normal range parent because they choose that parent to do the work because they know that parent is going to do the work. Okay, that is the truth. If you don't believe me, then you need to get out of this business. This is the truth about this family dynamic. It is true. And you need to understand this so that you can recover these families, okay? It's not normal for children to reject parents. It is not normal. When a child rejects a parent, something is happening. And so we have to get to the bottom of who's causing it. Is it mom, dad, or both? And then what do we do about it? We're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay. When children love both parents, we have to teach them that two teachers are better than one. We need to help children understand that mom and dad teach differently, that they're different people and they're different sides of their family, and they're reunited or they're united into the child as one, period. End of discussion. That is true. All the good and all the bad from both sides of the family integrated into the child is one. The child holds the container of both sides of the family, the trauma, the love, everything. That's held in the child. And we have to understand that. And when a child rejects a parent, they're rejecting half of who they are. We cannot allow that to continue to happen. It must stop. So when a child is rejecting, we must teach them how to integrate. Okay? Very critical. Focusing on the other parent's positive qualities is critical in teaching children how to love both parents and how to receive the love from both parents. You must do this with the parents and do this with the child. And you as a practitioner must find these qualities as well. And I know it can be difficult. Parents can be annoying, especially pathogenic parents. Sometimes chosen parents are annoying. Parents are annoying. They're suffering. They're suffering in their trauma. We don't want to leave them in trauma. We want to remove the trauma. And we do that by focusing on what they want, not what they don't want. So just like parenting skills, if we want something from the other parent, we focus on the good behavior of the other parent. Most of the time we're focused on how terrible they're acting or these things that we don't like. And so God, the universe, whatever you believe, keeps dishing it up for you. You keep getting what you don't want because you keep focusing on what you don't want. Same thing as for you as the practitioners. So we want to focus on what they want. Oftentimes when parents come to our practice, they'll tell us their story, spin, and I'll abruptly say, I hear all what you're saying. I've heard that story a million times. My question for you is, what do you want? And oftentimes it's a blank stare back. They don't know because they've been spinning in the pathology in this family dynamic for so long. They've been in the family court system for so long that nobody understands what's happening. They're stuck, and they finally get a voice, a human on the other end who says, I get it. This is what's happening. This is what's happening next. And they're like, oh my gosh, somebody gets it. They finally feel hope. They feel understood, right? But they're still spinning. But they don't know what they want. They've lost their way. It's our job as practitioners in this field to help our families get back to what they want, healthy family dynamic. Pathogenic parents want that too. They don't act that way because they're children who are triggered in their childhood trauma, who've become adults, and they are triggered. They are spinning in a cortisol spin zone, and they don't know how to fix it. They don't want to do what they're doing. They're suffering too. We must apply empathy to the entire family system. We don't pick off, well, I'm going to just work with this and to do that, or I'm going to do this. And it's a whole family problem, Whole family solution, okay? Whole family. We don't eliminate, we integrate, 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 integrate. If we eliminate, we're teaching the child that part of the child is bad and that must be gotten rid of, right? We must get rid of that part. We can't, we have to integrate, okay? And we must educate parents on how to shift from an intact to a separated family dynamic in a healthy way. This happens in the beginning. It can happen even if you're in the legal system, and it can happen even in the worst cases where the child is experiencing a full emotional cutoff. It can also happen in families with adult children. We've worked with families all around the world, everywhere, and I've watched parents recover their children after decades, okay? Decades of no contact. It is an abomination that decades have gone by, that children have not had relationships with their parents. It has to stop. We have to stop this. So prevention is how we do it. Woo, makes me emotional. I get emotional on my own talk. We got to educate parents on working on their own upset emotions, their own unresolved trauma from their childhood that is being triggered by their separation or their divorce or events after that that's triggering the pathology. We must educate parents, both parents, not from a blame place, right? This is not blame and shame. This is a place of understanding, empathy, and compassion. I understand. I see you. They want connection. Connect with them. The fastest way to turn a pathogenic parent from pathogenic to recovered is connection. Sounds crazy, but it's authentic connection, not feeding pathology connection, but authentic connection. So we have to teach parents how to disengage from conflict and how to re-engage with empathy. Empathy is the core. It is the critical component that's missing in most people's practice in recovering families. Empathy for the chosen parent, empathy for the child, and empathy for the pathogenic parent, empathy for the family. We must operate our practice with empathy, period. If you don't know what that means, I suggest taking a class with Brene Brown, who talks about empathy. It's critical to be crystal clear on what empathy means and that you're learning that and you're implementing that so you can help families re-engage in empathy. We got to help parents identify their emotions, and the emotions are contagious, and help them pick the good ones, okay? Emotions are contagious. So if you're picking apart a chosen parent, if the child comes into your practice, I'm talking to mental health providers or lawyers or even mediators, I'm talking to the practitioners here for a second, because I see this happen time and time again, and parents come to us and they are completely destroyed. They are completely traumatized. They're traumatized by you guys. They're traumatized by the practitioners who are triggering and poking the chosen parent. They are blaming them. They're making them try to figure out how to solve this when the practitioners aren't solving it themselves. And they are completely traumatized. And so they are acting or reacting to the trauma inappropriately, and they're getting blamed for that. And so the crevasse just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the chosen parent, they've lost their way. They've lost their way because we aren't showing them the path. We aren't teaching them that emotions are contagious. So you may get hooked into the emotions of the child. It's easy to do. But the emotions of the child are the emotions of the pathogenic parent. It's easy to do. So all of a sudden we're listening to the child, right? The child, I don't like this parent. I don't want to go to that parent's house. They're abusive. They're this, they're that. Maybe they did something, right? And so we're now focused on the unforgivable event, and we just keep bastardizing the parent, the chosen parent, right? The beloved parent. And the parent apologizes. Okay, I'm going to apologize. But the child says, it doesn't matter. See, you didn't apologize for a long time. Now you're apologizing. You're a liar. I still don't want to spend time with you. And the practitioner throws up their hands after sometimes years and says, there's nothing I can do. Sorry. Divorce is hard on the kids. Just wait around. They'll come around someday. And they never come around, right? That, if you're doing that, please stop. Okay. Please stop blaming the parents. Please stop blaming the chosen parent. Please stop blaming anyone. This isn't about blame. This is about helping people understand that we are all human and we're all connected by our human emotions and that they're contagious. And you are not above being hooked into the contagion of the pathogenic parents' unmanaged emotions. It's easy to do. You have to check yourself. You've got to teach the parents how to check themselves before they wreck themselves and their family. Okay. If you are blaming, it's okay. You can stop right now. So for practitioners that find themselves in that negative loop of spiral, stop at any time. You can take control of and reestablish the foundation of solution in your practice at any time. It starts with you as the leader, as the practitioner leading the family and teaching them the skills and helping them understand that emotions are contagious. You need to assist parents to shift the role for spouses to co-parents, okay? Co-parents may be parallel parents. If there is abuse, sometimes they have to parallel parent. Parallel parenting is co-parenting, okay? It's just on two tracks simultaneously. So you teach the child how to bridge baseball and basketball. Many kids can play two sports, right? So we want to teach them how to play basketball and baseball and that those two teams don't compete, okay? So we want to teach them. Co-parenting can sometimes be parallel parenting depending on the family situation. This needs to be taught in the beginning. And then we want to redefine the parent's relationship as a business contract of co-parenting. So remember earlier, and Dr. Childress says, Dorcy is a businesswoman. I am a businesswoman. And I've run a very successful business in this industry. And I used to be in the mortgage industry and I ran a very successful business in the mortgage industry. And the truth is business is business is business. And co-parenting is business, okay? It's a business agreement between two people who chose to bring a child or children into the world. And when you view a contract as a business contract, you help them remove the unmanaged emotions from the contract. For you mediators, this is really important. Use a template. We have a wonderful template that's 28 pages long. You don't need all of it, but you can use it as a way to help them design a business agreement on how to co-parent their kids, okay? Develop healthy communication skills. Oops, typo. Communication kills, but skills, you get it. You want to check their communication styles, okay? You want to see how the parents are communicating. Everybody communicates differently. They have different styles. Understand the different communication styles. So as you're working with the family, you can help them understand the communication style so that they don't take everything personally. This is really important. Use iMessages. We teach iMessages from the beginning all the way through the high road. We talk about iMessages because it anchors into the person who has the upset emotion. What is it and why do they feel that way and what do they want? Help them identify what they want. Using iMessages takes the chaos out of the situation and brings it back to cooperation. Active listening allows somebody that's using an iMessage, the receptive listener, the person to actually listen to what they're saying. So instead of arguing the whole time, they're actually listening and responding. That doesn't mean that they have to agree. It just means that they're learning skills to actually improve how they're communicating. If you implement this as a practitioner, you can lead by example and teach the family how to do this as well. And you help parents identify what the problem is and whose problem it is to solve. This is critical because problems are always going to be there. Conflict happens. It happens in all relationships, and we need to teach people how to resolve conflict. Even pathogenic people, you've got to teach the skills. Do it in the beginning so that if a massive conflict comes up, you can use the framework of conflict resolution to help them get back on track. We do this in the high road. We do this in our custody coaching and co-parenting. We do this everywhere. And you would be amazed if you just implement the simple strategies in the beginning, how much chaos and conflict you will eliminate in these families. And you've got to teach parents how to negotiate versus demand. Most of the time, parents are destabilized. We fuel the destabilization by, instead of negotiating and teaching them how to negotiate, we feed into the demands of the child. I don't want to. I want, my parent needs to go to therapy. My parent needs this, that. I'm not going to eat broccoli over there. We feed into those delusions and those demands of the pathology, the pathogenic parent through the child, that we as practitioners will get hooked into that and start making demands. So no, we want to teach them how to negotiate, right? How to ask for what they want, how to make a proposal versus demand emails back and forth. So teaching them how to communicate with each other is a core skill. It's a foundational skill that will eliminate most of the chaos that happens in family court, even in the most complex cases. So you want to help them create a conscious co-parenting relationship plan. So this realigns as co-parents consciously. Okay, they realign as either parallel or conscious or co-parents, but they realign in what that co-parenting plan looks like. They want to minimize the negative influences. This happens when they have a plan. Without a plan, they're just flailing around. They're reacting to each other. Even normal range parents will react to each other. Okay, so if they have a plan, it's a go-to. They can keep going back to it to make sure that they're staying the course. And then sometimes maybe things in the plan change, right? Maybe they have to elevate their plan or shift their plan because the children are getting older or something has changed. But if they have a plan, when they have a plan, it helps them minimize the chaos and the confusion. And not just a plan, but a detailed plan that has consequences that apply to both parents. Use the business relationship model that we've talked about. It takes all the spinning emotions out of it and places this as our contract. This is how we're going to agree to raise our children, even if it's baseball and basketball. Okay. And you're going to clarify boundaries in a healthy way. Learn these skills, you guys. If you learn these skills, you can teach these skills by role modeling and teaching them to your clients, and then be dedicated to a healthy future. We want to teach parents, even pathogenic parents, okay, how to have a healthy future. What is that? Right? What does a healthy family dynamic look like? What does it look like to solve normal range problems? What does it look like to solve crazy problems in a normal range, healthy way? Okay, we've got to teach these. These are all the things that a conscious co-parenting relationship plan include. And then let me tell you a little bit about custody resolution method. So that the first part is really prevention, but it's also layered in. So everything we do sort of layers into the next level and into the next level. It's thread throughout everything that we teach, and it's important. The custody resolution method, Dr. Childress touched a little bit about this yesterday, is really a data organizational tool. Let me stop. It is a wraparound program for a whole family problem that requires the whole family solution. There are different components to the custody resolution method. And I created this program because there was a massive hole in the family law system. And families that are dealing with pathogenic parents are going into the family court system and they're trying to solve this family dynamic known as parental alienation with the law. Sometimes we need the law, but unfortunately, we're asking lawyers and judges to solve a mental health crisis in our families, and they don't know how. It's not because they're bad people. It's not because they're stupid. It's because they're lawyers. They're trained to practice law, and mental health providers are trained to practice mental health. But something that's happened in this family dynamic and with mental health providers surrounding the family court is that we've gone into the wilderness of this, new pathology called parental alienation, which isn't a new pathology. And we've incorporated, like Dr. Childress said, forensic psychologists. So they're thinking differently. They're not thinking about solution. They're only thinking about asking a lot of questions and looking at stuff forensically. And unfortunately, that's created a massive mess. And so when a child aligns with a pathogenic parent, they become the representative of the pathology, and everybody gets emotionally hooked into the pathology. The lawyers, the judges, guardian ad litems, special counsel, minors counsel, parenting coordinators, mediators sometimes, mental health providers, they get hooked into the pathology and they aren't solving it. And this creates more pathology, and it creates a bigger split in the family. And I created the custody resolution method out of this massive hole in this space of like, what is happening and why are the lawyers not understanding? And one of the reasons that that legal professionals don't understand is these cases are wrought with just amazing amounts of data, emails and text messages and police reports and CPS reports and mental health reports and you name it, right? Audios and videos, and there's so much data in these family law cases. And sometimes you only have 5 minutes in court to present something to the court. Sometimes you have a long trial for evidence, but you don't know what you're presenting. Like lawyers are like trying to sort through all of this stuff. They're relying on the forensic psychologists, but they're relying on this new pathology called parental alienation that the APA says isn't a real thing. So now the mental health community is fighting. So everybody's like, I don't, which way do I go? I don't know what to do. So they do nothing. And the problem continues to get bigger and bigger. So custody resolution method was designed out of my sheer frustration as a parent and a practitioner, as somebody working with these families, to say, wait a minute, this must stop. What are we looking at? How do we create a scenario or an easy to understand scenario so that the lawyers and the judges can understand what's happening and implement a solution? So this is how this program was born. I want to talk a little bit again about the chosen parent. This is the parent that the child chooses, formally known as the targeted parent. This is the parent the child knows, who can often and will often go to the end of the world to discover what's going on, to recover the family. And I like this term because it is empowering. It says to the chosen parent who's been lulled to sleep by the dysfunctional system, you are not a victim. You're not a victim. You are chosen. Your child knows that you are going to do the work. Now, the system has victimized a lot of chosen parents, and sometimes consciously, most of the time unconsciously. This isn't about blaming anyone. This is about the reality of the situation. And we must empower the chosen parent. The chosen parent is the leader of the family. They are the ones who are going to do the work. If we destabilize them as practitioners and we focus on targeting them, we focus on blaming them, we focus on them fixing things when we don't know how to fix it ourselves, then we are destabilizing the leader of the family. We are extinguishing their light. We must stop that. We must stop extinguishing the light of the chosen parent. They are the light for the family. They are the ones shining the light on the pathway out of the pathology. The child chose them. We must also choose them. We must embrace them. We must embrace them with compassion and empathy, and we must empower them. We must elevate them in the family hierarchy where they have been taken down, as Dr. Childress talked about yesterday. We must elevate the chosen parent back into the family hierarchy. We must do that. We, as the people on the front lines working with the family, you must stop blaming the chosen parent. Even if they've done something wrong, we don't blame. We educate, we teach them skills, and we elevate so that we can reintegrate quickly, okay? Quickly. Stop taking so much time to figure things out. Okay, I'm going to teach you how to do that a little bit today, but I'm not a mental health provider, so I don't do assessment and diagnosis. But the custody resolution method takes a lot of what Dr. Childress has done and lays it out for a legal strategy for the mental health provider, for the legal professionals, and now we collaborate with mental health providers. But I want to say this here because the solution stands squarely on the chosen parent as a leader of the family. Do not blame them. It is not from a place of blame. It's from a place of elevation and empowerment, from a place of empathy. So the solution requires the old paradigm of parental alienation using Richard Gardner's framework to be dead. We can no longer use that framework, okay? I get it. I used it for a long time. I'm a child of this pathology. I understand it. When I went through my own divorce, that's all there was. I learned early on, the Gardner's 8 criteria, and I was like, yeah, that all makes sense. When I first started tagging timelines and creating this program, I used that as well because that's all there was. But there was a problem with it. It was too loosey-goosey. It was like left up to the practitioners to figure it out. And it's like, I don't know. And it was too hard. And so when Dr. Childress and I met, he brought into my world, just like he has to you, an actual foundation of what is going on, a simple pathway to solution, a simple assessment and diagnostic model that says, these are the symptoms, this is what's happening, and here's the diagnosis, and here's what to do about it, okay? Gardner, dead. Sorry. I appreciate the fact that he illuminated something that was happening around family court, and we can all have gratitude for that, but we must now put that in a nice little box and send it down the river. It does not lead to a solution. I know I've operated under both models. That model does not lead to a solution. And let me say here too, you cannot use both. Okay. So for those of you that are trying to incorporate both, stop it. Stop. The Gardner model has created the pathology in the family court system. It is creating the chaos. It is creating the conflict. It is creating parental alienation is not a thing. It is creating parents are using parental alienation as a way to abuse children. Okay, that is that model. It's created there. Stop using it. If you use it, you're going to be part of the problem, and you're going to continue to kick the solution down the street. Okay. It's old. It doesn't work. It's done. All right, I'll stop beating a dead horse. Let me talk a little bit about the diagnostic indicator checklist. Dr. Childress talked a little bit about that yesterday. I'm going to talk about it today because we use this in the custody resolution method. It is simple, it is brilliant, and it will determine what is happening in the family dynamic from the child's perspective. What is happening? So we're focused on mom doing this or dad doing that, and he said, she said, da 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 da, chaos, chaos, chaos. When we look at the symptomology in the child, Dr. Childress so brilliantly states this, there are 3 impossible symptoms, each one alone, in all of society if it shows up in the child. What is going on? If the child has these 3 impossible symptoms, something is causing it. Is it mom, dad, or both? So we at the Institute, we look at the data. We look at all of this data, emails and text messages and reports and all the stuff that these cases have, and we look at it from an analytical perspective. What's happening? Does the child have the symptoms, right? You start with the child. Is the child symptomatic? If yes, then we move out. Who's causing it? Mom, dad, or both, or somebody else. What's happening? Okay. So I don't want to dive too much into the diagnostic checklist here. You can download it on Dr. Childress's website. I'm pretty sure all of you have it. If you don't, for God's sake, please go to Dr. Childress's website and download his assessment documents that have this checklist. It's brilliant. It simplifies things for you. It really, really takes you out of the wilderness and the spin zone and back into accepted constructs by psychology, right? This is what's happening. Anchor into psychology. Stop talking about parental alienation. We're talking about it here because it's what we know, but I'm going to move away from that. We're talking about pathogenic parenting. We're talking about child psychological abuse. So this is another image from Dr. Childress. I'm moving into some slides that Dr. Childress created for our presentation at the AFCC. And Dr. Childress and I met in the summer. We met in the fall of 2013, and we started to collaborate in the fall of 2014. And I met Dr. Childress at a conference that I was speaking at on parental alienation. And in the summer or fall of 2014, I took a class he was hosting at the university in Southern California. And I was the only person there that wasn't a mental health provider. One of my clients who I had recovered her stepchildren in the high road begged me to go. And so I went, and I was super excited to watch Dr. Childress roll out his assessment and diagnostic model in a university setting. And I was like, yes, yes, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. And then at the end, he started rolling out a therapeutic model for solution. And I'm like, well, wait a second, why would you take 9 months when I can solve this in a matter of days? And after class, big Dr. Childress, he's a big guy. He's like 6, I don't know, 5. He's huge. He's tall. He says, hey, I want to talk to you after class. And my friend kind of scampers out, and Dr. Childress and I met after his class, and we talked about what I do as a coach and things like that. And he sent me an email, and in the email was this beautiful document, and it had this image on it. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's exactly what I do. And So thank you, Dr. Childress, for this, for everything I say. Sometimes, you know, I'm like talking all over the place, and Dr. Childress will write this beautiful article or document about, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. So this solutions focused model, this is a proposed treatment model, and it's composed of 4 separate but interrelated components. And they're important because you can interchange the role of whoever's in the middle, but the person in the middle is somebody who's organizing the treatment or the solution, if you will, for the family. And so the coach or the consultant, this is the person that really serves as the interface, right? For the treatment team. They are like, lawyer, this is what's happening. Therapist, this is what's happening. The psychologist, maybe they bring in the psychologist if they need a psychological consult or assessment. But this is the person who is looking at everything and saying, okay, this is what's happening in the family, and here's who we need. These are the players, these are professionals that need to be involved. This is the model of custody resolution method. When clients hire us, we act as a dual role. We have a coach that's assigned to the client, and they work with the chosen parent, stabilizing them, teaching the skills that I talked about earlier, communication, how to communicate with all the professionals on the team, how to communicate with the other parent, how to communicate with the children, how to show up differently for the children, how to create the soft place for the child to land, how to be the emotional trash can, if you will. I've talked about this in higher purpose parenting, where they learn to let the child dump the rubbish, the garbage into them, and they take it out. They don't hold it into their emotional container anymore. We teach those skills to the parent. That's what the coach does. I act in the role as a consultant in this process. So I work with everybody on the team. We have data taggers that tag timelines based on the pathology, based on all forms of child abuse, and also who's doing it. So we tag the data based on what's happening in the family dynamic. The timelines are cool because it organizes everything chronologically. We can sort by the symptoms in the child, but we give the case narrative. There's a data output. What does all this data mean? We provide that to the lawyer. We can provide it to the guardian. We can provide it to the evaluators, to the therapist. We can provide it to everyone. We work collaboratively with everybody involved in the family case to say, hey, everybody, this is what's happening, and here's what we do about it. So in the lawyer, it could be an amicus lawyer or collaborative lawyer. Right now we have 2 lawyers, sometimes 3 in these cases because they're pretty complex. But the goal is to move to like a 1 lawyer model where the one person is really helping resolve the legal issues in the family. And then the psychological consultant, this could be Dr. Childress or somebody in your area that understands the attachment model, that understands the pathology, that can act as a professional expert in the court, that can understand, that can interpret the data. And then also a family therapist. This is the person treating the family, okay? This is the person treating the family, all right? Should be one person that is working with the whole family problem, whole family solution, okay? This person, even when there's abuse, can be working with different parts of the family at different times, but the goal is integration, not elimination, okay? So if you think about that framework, then that's what that person is doing. They're bringing the family together and integrating, right? Let me just go a little bit more into the diagnostic checklist. This is the foundation of everything that we tag in our timelines, and then we move out from here. So I'm just going to jump into this really quickly because for those of you that don't understand the diagnostic checklist, or other people who might be watching this later, the diagnostic checklist was a document created by Dr. Childress to show the symptomology and for mental health practitioners to use to determine what's happening. If the child has these symptoms, then to figure out what the cause is. So the first symptom is the child's suppression of their attachment, their motivating drive to attach with their parents. If they are experiencing emotional cutoff with one of their parents, then they're experiencing a suppression of their emotional or their attachment system. That needs to be fixed immediately. We cannot leave that in a breach state. I don't care what has happened. We must fix this, okay? We must fix this. We must help the child, right? Learn the skills to give and receive love from both parents, all right? Not elimination, integration, starts with education. And then the personality disorder traits. These are the 5: absence of empathy, entitlement, haughty and arrogant attitude, the splitting pathology of mom's all good, dad is all bad, and grandiose. These are the pathology personality traits towards the chosen parent. Okay. And then the delusional belief, the child believes it's an encapsulated persecutory delusion. So Dr. Childress talks about, it's a belief that this parent is causing the child harm, that the normal range chosen parent is causing the child harm. And this is how they come into your practice, and you're trying to fix this. And many times practitioners are trying to solve a delusion. We'll just apologize. Well, the child has come to believe that it's true, so now you need to apologize for it. Stop that, because you're just reinforcing delusions in kids, and the family, it doesn't solve. So I'm going to give you a little kernel of something that we use in the high road right here. If this is happening in your practice, you can stop this by putting a ceasefire, a moratorium on the delusion. You can simply take your practice back, take responsibility for this, and step into that leadership role by letting the family know that this is an unresolvable issue. It's over here. We're not going to talk about that anymore because we can't solve it. We can't go back and do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to build skills moving forward from here. Are you seeing a theme? Skills, skills, skills. But first, you must diagnose what's going on. If you don't know what's happening in the family, how can you possibly help them solve it? The diagnostic indicator checklist is a simple tool to use. Now, I'm not going to dive a lot into the assessment here because it's not my role. There's also a parenting practices rating scale that you can use to determine who's causing the problems. But I'm using this here because I'm talking about what we use as a foundation in the custody resolution method based on our data. We're looking at the data. We're looking at the historical data in the case. I want to bang through these really quick. The associated clinical signs. These are things that Dr. Childress has added to the diagnostic checklist. So if the symptoms are there, you can go through these associated clinical signs. And if they're there, check them off. In our data tagging, we have at least a minimum of 7 to 8 of the 12 associated clinical signs, but frequently 10. So on average, there are 10 of the associated clinical signs in almost every data profile that we tag. So use of the word force, you can't force me to see the other parent, the enhancing the child's empowerment to reject the other parent. This could be the child should decide, we need to listen to the child. We talked about this in one of the questions, how do we listen to a child when the child is being alienated, right? Then that's the inauthentic voice of the child. This checklist, if you use this, you will quickly discover whether the child is being authentic or not, okay? The exclusionary demand, it's not normal for children to not want their parent to watch them play soccer or to be involved in their life. It's creepy that they're taking pictures of me. How dare you videotape me? When last year, when the marriage was intact, they did that, but this year now it's creepy. If the child is saying this, we see this almost in every case. Parental replacement, we see this when there's a new spouse or a new boyfriend or girlfriend, then the child starts to replace that parent, calling them mom or dad. No, that is not appropriate. Mom is mom and dad is dad. Have another name for the stepmom or the stepdad. I like to call them the bonus parents. Bonus means that they bring additional love to the child, not rejection, okay? The unforgivable event, the event that I was just talking about where the child can't let it go, it's because the other parent can't let it go. This we see almost always in our cases where the child is, I never want to see my parent again because they took my iPhone away from me. I mean, simple stuff. It can be drastic stuff too, but the unforgivable event. There are no events that we see that are unforgivable. Even child abuse. I'm going to say this here, and I know it's controversial, but child abusers are adult children of child abusers, and we don't eliminate people. We educate and we rehabilitate. In all other areas of child abuse, the goal in CPS is to educate, rehabilitate, and when possible, reintegrate, okay? Reunite with abusive parents. It's only this area of abuse that this is not happening. And we are today where we were 40 years ago with child sexual abuse. It wasn't that long ago. It's in my lifetime that we have child protective services and we're saying, hey, we shouldn't sleep with children. Yeah, of course not. Gross. It's child abuse, right? That's the family dirty little secret. Dr. Childress talks about that's where this pathology comes from, the lineage of child sexual abuse in the family, right? This is what's being triggered by the separation. Oftentimes parents are triggered by their own childhood pathology, or maybe a couple generations back. Okay. This is how new it is. And then it's only in my children's lifetime, that we are now protecting children from physical abuse. It was when my first daughter was born, maybe just before that, that we were saying as a society, we shouldn't spank children. We shouldn't hit children. Wait a second. Physical abuse of children is bad. We should be doing something about that. We should be protecting children from that. Seriously, that's where we are. And today is where we are, where we were 25 years ago and 40 years ago with sexual abuse and physical abuse. Today, we're with psychological abuse, waking up as a society saying, hey, wait a minute. We shouldn't be doing this to children. Children shouldn't be rejecting parents. We shouldn't be eliminating parents from something's wrong, right? This is having long-term consequences for families. What are we doing? Yeah, we should protect children from psychological abuse. Psychological abuse kills the child from the inside out, okay? It leaves scars that we don't see. It creates pathogen, okay? It creates pathogenic parents, all right? If we allow children to reject parents, what we're saying is we're going to allow this to happen to you. We don't care about you. We're allowing you to become pathogenic so that your children can experience the same pathology. We don't want to solve it. Sorry. And this is a tragedy. We need to stop this. Stop it. 12-year-old children, 15-year-old children, 18-year-old children, 25-year-old children. We shouldn't be allowing young adults and children to eliminate parents from their life. It is colluding with abusive parents, and we are abusing children. If that is what you're doing in your practice, please stop. You're abusing children. You're colluding with pathogenic parents to create psychopathology in a child. If you're focusing on issues that didn't happen, you're focusing on delusions, you're creating psychopathology in a child. I'm going to say it. I'm a bold person. You may not like it. Sorry, that's the truth. That is what's happening. Stop it. And then the fake and a liar. We see this as an associated clinical sign all the time. Not every time, but we see it a lot. And then we see themes of rejection. So oftentimes the themes of rejection could be they're abusive, they're mean, they don't feed me. There's all kinds of different themes of rejection. Unwarranted use of the word abuse. So the child says abuse when further investigation, they don't really know what that means. The excessive texting with or phone calls and emails with the pathogenic parent on the chosen parent's time. And then also the role reversal of the child. It's not me, it's the child. It's the child who doesn't want to go to the other parent. I can't force them. I want them to spend time with this parent, but that parent needs to fix their problems, okay? If you see this, you need to dig deeper. But hopefully you're going to be using the checklist and you understand. The allied targeted parent deserves to be, the targeted parent deserves to be rejected, right? The children say this, the court says this, the pathogenic parent says this. We see this all the time. Everybody's jumped on the bandwagon that the chosen parent, the targeted parent, they deserve it. So if we see the symptomology in the child, this is a red flag. And then the allied parent disregards court orders or the authority of the court, okay? And they encourage the child to do this. If we're encouraging children as professionals to ignore court orders and the court's authority, we're in fact telling the child, hey, the laws don't apply to you. Don't worry, you can do whatever you want. The laws don't apply to you. Our prison system is filled, in America anyways, filled with 89% of or roughly 89% of the prison population, both men and women, all races, are raised in a one-parent home, mostly a fatherless home. Okay, this is a problem. This is what we're causing. This is what we're creating by eliminating parents from children's lives. We must learn to integrate. Okay, if you're not using this, you're doing it wrong. Use Dr. Childress's diagnostic indicator checklist. We use this as the foundation of our tagging to understand, is the symptomology in the child? Do we have a subthreshold of the symptoms or are the symptoms actually present? And if so, what are we going to do about it? Now, not all roads lead to the high road. So everybody thinks when they come to us, we got to have a high road. I need to protect the child. We got to take him out. Da, 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 da. Not all roads lead to the high road. Back in the day, I used to think all roads led to the high road because I really believed that that same delusion that most people believe, that the targeted parent, right? I was believing that they were targeted and I called them a targeted parent and I focused on that. And something shifted in me and I realized, no, these are the chosen parents. We must light their fire again. We must illuminate them. We must help them shine the light. We must teach them how to shine the light for the family, how to lead their family out of the pathology. I would prefer that the chosen parent does the work in the custody resolution method. They're learning those skills that I talked about at the beginning. And when they learn those skills, even while they're already in chaos, so for those of you who have families already in court, we can lift the family out of the pathology, okay? You can learn these skills, you can teach these skills now. Our coaches know these skills and they teach the parents, okay? We can lead the family. The parent, the chosen parent, must do the work, all right? Not from a place of blame, from a place of empowerment. They must learn the skills and implement them. Okay, not one time, usually multiple times. Okay, so most people want to talk about the problem. We focus on the solution. We have to understand what the problem is. That's what our data does. Our data looks at all forms of child abuse. Our data we look at the pathology, the diagnostic indicator checklist. We look at all other forms of abuse. We're trained to assess that kind of abuse based on data, not from a mental health. We're not mental health providers, but from the data. Does the data represent that? And then the parenting practices, does the data represent who's doing what? What's happening? Okay. Our narrative says this is what's happening. Here's what you do about it. All right. So not all roads lead to the high road. During the custody resolution method, the coaching and our online courses, Higher Purpose Parenting, teaches you or teaches the targeted parent or the chosen parent how to clean up their vessel from the inside. What are their traumas, micro and macro traumas? What are they? How to clean them up so they can shift how they're showing up for their children, so they can learn to manage their emotions, right? That they can be emotional trash can for the child. Instead of taking it in and taking it personally, they can take it in, put it in a nice, good, smell good liner and throw it away, right? Creating that soft place for the child to land. Teach the parents how to do this. Do this. If you role model this as a professional, you will teach the parents how to do this. This is what we do. Professionals working as a solution-focused team will follow a solution-focused model. You'll follow a model where everybody is collaborating together. You'll educate parents and empower them with skills, and you'll make sure that the chosen parent is supported properly, okay? Elimination, no. Integration, yes, we want to integrate. It's a whole family problem, requires a whole family solution. We need to stop segregating people out. When we put only the child in therapy, the message that goes to the child is something's wrong with the child. If we put the targeted parent or the chosen parent in therapy, we're saying to the chosen parent, there's something wrong with you. If the chosen parent and the child are the only two in therapy and there's a pathogenic parent causing the pathology in the family, they're not getting treatment. They need treatment. They need treatment the most, but we're ignoring them. They're not getting the treatment. Whole family problem, whole family solution, family therapy, family systems therapy, where somebody understands personality disorders and understands attachment system, golden, okay, golden. And then in the custody resolution method, we tag and analyze the data, and then we give it meaningful data output. In the custody resolution method, Dr. Childress, we can give him the codes based on the diagnostic indicator checklist and the parenting practices rating scale, and he can write an if this then that report. We can do that with your mental health provider. We're happy to get them up on board and up to speed on how to do that. He's only one person, right? He's the only one. We need lots of them. We need you as mental health providers. We need you doing this. I'd love to not have to do the custody resolution method anymore because you're doing this, right? This really is your job. You should be assessing and diagnosing. Dr. Childress has a beautiful assessment and diagnostic model that leads to treatment. Assessment leads to diagnosis, leads to treatment. I'm repetitive. Dr. Childress says that all the time. It's true. And so many times families come into like a court-ordered practitioner and there's no assessment. You're just trying to do something. You're trying to fix stuff. Well, what are you fixing? You need to know what's happening so that you can diagnose it, so that you can treat it properly, so that you can move the family out of therapy. You can teach them the skills. You need to move to a skill-based model, a solution-focused model versus a problem model, okay? Skill-based model says these are the skills, this is what's happening, these are the skills, teach the family, teach them how to solve their problems. You're going to demonstrate with empathy and respect for everyone, for everyone. The whole family is the patient. The whole family is the client. You have respect and empathy for everyone. Okay. You help them look for alternative solutions. Help them find solutions. Don't just give them solutions. Help them find the solution that already resides within them. They already know. You want to help them respond versus react. Okay. You want to help the parents respond to what's happening versus being destabilized and reacting to what's happening. And you want to help them set healthy boundaries and limit the behavior. Okay. So this isn't about elimination. It's about integration. And oftentimes I see therapists and I work with therapists and they're like, really, the targeted parent, they don't know, they're not respecting the child's wishes, so they don't know what their boundaries are. No, that the child's wishes in this family dynamic are not the child's wishes. We're just reinforcing delusion and pathology when we do that. Stop. Okay. Help them set healthy boundaries. Help the child understand the importance of giving and receiving love, unconditional love from both parents. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about the high road. Let me just check my time here. I don't even know how much time we have. I don't even know what time I'm supposed to stop. Ken, am I still good on time? I've got probably.
You're going well. You've got another, I'd like just see, you're good till 6. So you've got another 28 minutes, Dorcy, but you don't have to use it all with presentation. We can do question and answer whenever suits you.
Okay, excellent. Awesome. Good. All right. I know some of you have been waiting for the high road, wanting to know what the high road is, how it works, why it works. And the high road is a catalytic psychoeducational intervention. Dr. Childress coined that phrase. I love it. It's true. When Dr. Childress and I met several years ago in his office, I opened up my high road treasure chest and said, let me show you what I'm doing. And in that meeting, which was a 2-hour meeting that became a 6-hour meeting, Dr. Childress really was like, oh my gosh, I can see what you're doing. We did battle in that meeting too. There were, why don't you become a psychologist? I'm like, why? He's like, well, maybe you'll get rid of the flying monkeys. I'm like, well, you have flying monkeys and a lot of psychologists do. So what's the point? And I've already solved it. I don't want to go clutter my brain with something that doesn't work. I'd rather focus on what does work. We went round and round about that in a playful, maybe heated way at times, but here we are today. And Dr. Childress understands the high road. He's observed the high road. He's actually taken a child into maintenance care after a high road. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But we never leave a child and a parent bond breached. It is the worst thing that we can do in this family dynamic. We do not leave it breached. If you're leaving the breach in a parent-child relationship, you're actually causing harm to the child and to the parent. It's abusive to both people. It's also abusive to the pathogenic parent because you're reinforcing the pathology in the pathogenic parent. We must stop the pathology. The pathology can be healed. I know a lot of mental health providers think that's not true, that you can't help a narcissist or you can't help a borderline, or no, you absolutely can. Everybody can learn new skills. Brain research, we've discovered that you can rewire the brain in adult life. You can actually use different parts of the brain and start exercising that muscle of the brain, and access empathy. So it used to be said that people with pathology don't have empathy. It's not true. They do have empathy. They have the empathy center in their brain. They just simply have not built the pathway to access the empathy. There's a lot of research that's happening in prisons right now that are with prisoners that have the most extreme of the psychopathologies and antisocial personality disorder. And they're discovering that they, through skill building and practice, that they're actually growing the neural pathways into accessing the empathy center in the brain. Okay, huge. If we ignore this, we're causing or we are influencing and continuing the psychopathology in the parent. Stop. We can actually teach them the skills. All right. It's repetitive. The world has given up on them. The societal message is that they don't deserve it. They do. They do deserve it. And the reason they deserve it is their children deserve it. They're just an adult child. Okay. An adult child who was abused, and the system or somebody, the family forgot about them. They didn't help them. Okay. Now they're the parent, and now they're parenting, and they're pushing their psychopathology into the child. And if we don't stop it, if we don't help them, then the child becomes can very easily develop the pathology. Okay, so we want to end it in this generation, and we can. We all have the skills, or you're going to learn the skills. You can do this. It's a simple framework for solution. If there is child abuse, any kind of child abuse, we must first protect the child. Okay, if all three diagnostic symptoms are present and you determine that it's child psychological abuse, you must protect the child. All right, we must remove the child from the abusive situation. If the child was being molested, we would remove the child. If the child was being beaten, we would remove the child. Psychological child abuse abuses a child from the inside out. We must remove the child. We must remove the bruising in the child's attachment system in the child's brain so that we can recover the child. Okay. We then educate the child and the chosen parent, and we restore the unbreakable bond. The bond between a parent and child is never broken. It is not broken. I don't care how damaged it is. I don't care how rejecting the child is. I don't care how many decades have gone by. The bond between a parent and child is never broken, ever. It's just tucked below the surface for safekeeping. When the chosen parent rises up and learns the skills, creates the soft place to land for the child, the authentic child, they give the child permission, the authentic child permission to rise up again, and the bond is resurfaced. Okay. Never broken. We then rehabilitate the abusive parent, right? During the protective separation. Nobody is left behind here, you guys. The high road isn't like, oh, dad's out, mom's in, or mom's out, dad's in. No, it's about rehabilitation. We must rehabilitate the pathogenic parent. We must do this with empathy and compassion and firm boundaries. They must follow the guidelines. We must teach them, okay? We must teach them with empathy and compassion. It is not about rejection, all right? We're not moving from one camp to the other. It's a temporary protective separation. We protect all abused children all of the time. We recover them, we restore, and then we reintegrate in a controlled environment. We educate, rehabilitate, and then we reintegrate in a controlled environment, okay? That's always the goal. So when we reintegrate in the controlled environment, we use the relationship rating scale that Dr. Childress shared with you yesterday. We use that to monitor how the child is doing. We educate the child in the workshop, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, on how to be in relationship with both parents. This sets us apart from everybody. We do not focus on blame. We focus on education. We teach the child, mom is mom and dad is dad, and how to give and receive love from both parents. Even when one and sometimes both parents are pathogenic. It happens. What do? Sorry, you guys are out. I take the kid. I can't. My house isn't that big. I'd have a lot of children. No, we educate. We fix the family system. Okay. Is it going to be perfect? Probably not. There's no such thing. No such thing as a perfect parent. But we teach them how to be in relationship with each other. This is critical. We must do this. We must do this at all levels. Do not let this continue to fester in your practice. If this is happening in your practice, please pay attention. Please implement these skills. So the next few slides I've integrated from the presentation that Dr. Childress and I did at the AFCC conference in 2017. I know, 17. We taught the high road in 2017 to a room full of hundreds of professionals. Guys, it's been out there. If you were there, please pay attention again. If you weren't there and you're listening to this for the first time, I hope some light bulbs come on for you. And I hope that you start implementing what I'm teaching you today in your practice. Please, please do it for the children. Do it for the next generation. Move to something else. Let's eliminate this now so we can move to other things that we get to solve in the world. So I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Childress, because most of all of the images in these slides he created. He's a rock star in helping create visuals of what's happening in the family. So High Road is psychoeducational intervention. It involves a sequence of structured activities that restore the normal range functioning of the child. Okay, the normal range functioning of their attachment system. Their attachment system, as Dr. Childress says, is a love and bonding system, right? It's what motivates children to bond, to give and receive love. If it's deactivated, right? If it's deactivated, what's going to happen to that child? Back in the day, they would be eaten by predators. We must fix this now. So psychoeducational involves videos, skill building exercises, and ways of unlocking the brain center to help the child recover their authenticity. Okay. So I love this image. There are two treatment models that Dr. Childress talked about in the pilot program. One is the protective separation in a traditional therapeutic model. So you can see in this diagram that the child is the attachment system is dysfunctional. Mom is out, right? That's child psychological abuse. There's an emotional cutoff. Let me just say this here too. A child can be going back and forth and still be experiencing an emotional cutoff. That's the child that might be going into their room, bringing their own snacks, not really talking to the parent, but going on the parenting time. That is still a child experiencing emotional cutoff. So a lot of people in the old model say, well, the child's still going back and forth, so it can't be alienation. I don't know what's going on. Yes, that's an emotional cutoff. A child can go back and forth and still be emotionally cut off from their parent. Okay. So the high road is appropriate for that situation as well. So there's two models. This is a protective separation in the traditional model where there's a therapist that's involved that works with the parent and the child. And it takes, I think Dr. Childress says, like 6 to 9 months to resolve the pathology in a traditional therapeutic model. The high road is same pathology, but it resolves the pathology in a 4-day intervention. So the high road is a 4-day workshop, psychoeducational workshop, where the targeted chosen parent and the child participate in a workshop with the facilitators where we go through a series of psychoeducational films and activities and skill building to teach the child and the parent how to be in relationship again, how to transition from the old family paradigm, the dysfunction in the family, how they separated and didn't do a very good job, to how to do it in a healthy way. Okay, we do this in the workshop. A lot of the skills that I've talked about, actually all of the skills that I've already talked about, we teach this in the high road, okay? It's not complex, you guys. It's pretty simple. Prevention, same skills. Intervention during custody, where the kids are going back and forth and there's still stuff going, same skills, okay? High road, same skills, okay? It's not rocket science. It is actually pretty simple. We're just complicating things. There's no need, okay? It's the old mindset. We've all been lulled to sleep. It's time for us to wake up, all right? The high road is an augmented workshop to a treatment plan that allows us to recover the authenticity of the child quickly. And then there's a temporary protective separation after the workshop where the child is living with the normal range chosen parent, and the pathogenic parent is working with the family systems therapist, okay? They're working through the maintenance care. They're working through family systems therapy through skill building with the maintenance care therapist, okay? That's separate from the high road. They're learning the skills that we taught the chosen parent and the child in the workshop, okay? So everybody learns the same skills. Nobody's being eliminated. There's a temporary protective separation. This is the child protection model, you guys. Nothing new here, right? This isn't draconian, where a lot of lawyers and opposing counsel will say, this is draconian, this is terrible. No, it's not. It isn't. This is a traditional child abuse model. But if the child was being beaten by the father, we would remove the child from the father and we would place the child with the mother, okay? And we would recover the family. This is what we do, right? Same thing. And then that family systems therapist, they're the person who will integrate the whole family system, right? They will integrate mom and dad with the child, and they will act as the authentic voice of the child, right? They will use the relationship rating scale to understand the child's readiness. It's simple. It's 3 things on the rating scale. It's not complicated. It's simple and easy to implement. We give the child their authentic voice back, okay? An authentic child loves both parents. The authentic voice of the child wants to give and receive love from both parents, right? This is the authentic voice of the child. Anything outside of that is not authentic, okay? It's not authentic. These slides, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. These are the slides that Dr. Childress created for our presentation in the AFCC. I included them because they're awesome and they really provide an awesome visual of what's happening. This is a normal range attachment system, right? The affectional emotion, empathy, and compassion are lit up, as Dr. Childress says. It's working. They're firing properly. When the child comes to the high road, this is what's happening. The child's attachment system is dormant, okay? They're not operating with their affectional emotions, their empathy, and their compassion. It's dormant, it's asleep. So when the child first arrives, they usually show up in protest behavior, anger, which is in these children, and I don't want to be repetitive. I think Dr. Childress said this yesterday, but anger in alienated kids is just a misappropriated grief response. The child is grieving. The child is sad. The child's lost a relationship with their beloved parent. He or she's grieving, and it's showing up as anger. They're mad. They're mad at you, the practitioners. They're mad at you, the lawyers and the judges. They're mad at us because we don't understand their grieving. We're ignoring it. So they're mad that nobody's helping them solve this pathology in their family. They're pissed, right? They're projecting it on the targeted parent, they're targeting that parent, the chosen parent. They want that parent to fix it, and they want you to help them. But we don't get it. We've been lulled to sleep. We need to wake up. Okay, we've got to wake up. The child is angry. They show up at the workshop angry. They do. They're hostile. Sometimes they're aggressive. Sometimes they come with adolescent transport. There's a lot of scuttlebutt on the internet about the transportation companies. These are third-party companies. This is what they do. They transport at-risk youth to different things. Sometimes workshops like this, sometimes rehabilitation, sometimes wilderness camps or behavioral camps like military camps. This is their job. Their job is to transport adolescents safely. They're trained professionals. That's what they do. So sometimes kids come to the high road like that. In the high road, our job from the beginning is to reestablish the family hierarchy. And we do this by helping them understand that the court is the authority, that I'm there as a facilitator, the facilitator's there as the authority of the court, that we are explaining to them that there's a new law and order in their family. This is what it is, that there's a protective separation, and that we are going to fix things. And they reintegrate with their other parent when we fix things. We're not leaving the other parent behind. We let the children know that the other parent is also learning skills. We don't call the other parent the pathogenic parent, by the way. We don't label parents, okay? We label mom and dad. We teach the child that we're going to take care of that parent as well. We help them understand that the family system is dysfunctional. And while they may not agree with that, we're going to fix this relationship and then we're going to fix that relationship. Okay. We help them understand that we're not leaving anybody behind, that we're integrating, not eliminating. Okay. And we do this in the first media piece is about empathy. So I reset the family hierarchy. I help them understand whoever's attending, mom or dad is mom or dad. That's what we're going to call them. These are the rules of the workshop. And this is the law of the land. This is the order of the court, that the court is in charge, that the judge is the ruler of the land and has created a new family paradigm. And my job is simply to teach them how to shift the old paradigm into the new family paradigm, that it just got knotted up at the beginning, that the parents didn't do a very good job separating. And I'm going to teach them how to unknot the family system. Okay. So I don't launch into, all right, you're going to start working with dad here. I launch into unlocking the empathy center. Okay. So the first thing we do is we watch a short film on empathy and everybody relaxes. Before this happens, there's usually a 5 to 30 minute window of protest behavior. So the child's going to act out in protest. Sometimes they cuss, sometimes they cry, sometimes they're just quiet. Sometimes there isn't any protest behavior. Every time what I feel is a relief. There's always a relief that's palpable in the room. The child, once they understand that they're protected, there is a release that the child has, that I'm in charge, that they're no longer in charge, that I'm lifting the weight of the world off of the child, okay? There is a release in the child that they don't have to fix it, that we're here to help. They're going to poke to see if they can trust me. Am I telling them the truth? Am I trustworthy? Sometimes they've seen multiple mental health providers who haven't understood what's happening. Sometimes they've spoken to the judge. It's the worst thing to do to this child. Bringing a child into the courtroom and asking their opinion about what to do in their family situation is abusive. Why are we asking the child? We need to stop doing that. We, as the professionals and the adults, need to fix this. We need to understand, based on assessment and diagnosis, what is happening, and then we fix it. We fix it for the child. We don't ask the child. That's terrible. We don't ask the child. We never place the child in the loyalty bind. When we put them in the family courtroom and speaking to the judge, that's terrifying for them. It can be traumatizing. We're asking the child then to solve it. Stop. We don't ask the child to solve it. We solve it. We help them solve it. Okay. And then we launch into some interactive activities that start to launch the empathy center in the child. Okay. So the compassion center. So first we unlock empathy. The child relaxes. Okay, I don't have to talk to my parent. They're not going to force me to be in therapy. It's not therapy. Okay, we're just going to let the child relax into this. And then we unlock compassion. Now I have empathy and compassion firing. This is day one in the morning. Okay, day one in the morning, I have empathy and compassion firing. When we do that, we launch into additional media that addresses the anger. We talk about different parts of the brain that deal with anger and influence and projection and racism and all of the things that create anger, right? So we watch out here. We're not talking about what's happening. We watch out here in the family so that the child is learning, right? Not blaming. We're not blaming mom or dad. We're just learning. We're watching short stories about different things that happen that apply to this family dynamic, but isn't necessarily the family dynamic, okay? Anger dissipates. When empathy and compassion are glowing, anger just goes away. They both can't be firing at the same time, right? It goes away, but we still have grief because the child is still sad. The child is still sad that they've lost this time. They've lost this relationship. They're paralyzed with guilt and shame for how they're treating their parent that didn't deserve it. Okay. They know their parent didn't deserve the behavior, but they didn't know what to do because we failed them as a professional community. We failed them and they weren't safe. So they were hiding. They were hiding because they weren't safe to be authentic. Okay. So the grief is still there and we treat this very delicately, right? No shame and blame. We want to recover the authenticity of the child. We don't want them to feel shame and blame. We don't want them to feel guilt. We already know. And trust me when I tell you, the guilt the child feels is a legacy that they carry with them. It never goes away. Okay. It never goes away. I'm almost 52 years old. I did reunite with my dad. I've reunited thousands of families and it never goes away. Okay. It just doesn't go away. We must help these kids. We must help these kids. Okay. Then we launch into media that starts to bring the affection forward. All right. So we want to start getting the child affectionately connected to the chosen parent again. We're doing it out here. We're watching media to help recover the affectionate bond. We letting the child know that I can be trusted, right? That I'm not there to harm anybody. I'm not there to eliminate the other parent. I'm not there to talk bad about anybody. I'm there to help them transition to the new family paradigm, to help them invite both of their parents back into their life again, to help them recover their unbreakable bond, to help them receive that unconditional love that they've been missing from mom or dad. And when that happens, that starts firing. Then we have an attachment system that's firing again, and the grief starts to go away. So when we are finished, the anger that's sort of looming in the back, it goes away, and the child's attachment system is glowing. This happens by lunch on day 2. Okay, day 2, we have resurfaced the unbreakable bond with the parent and the child and the parent are interacting. Sometimes on day 2, I have an I love you. Sometimes they are like leaning, there's a hug. Sometimes there's none of that, but there's communication that's happening. Okay, the first night of the the family stays together. Okay, the family stays together, the family plays together. The reason that this is so powerful and it works is that we believe, I wholeheartedly believe in the parent, the chosen parent, and I wholeheartedly believe in the child's ability, and I wholeheartedly believe in the unbreakable bond. I know it's true. Failure is not an option. I know it's true. And I believe in their ability to learn the skills and to resurface the unbreakable bond. And I believe in the truth that the attachment system that Dr. Childress talks about is the motivational system of love and bonding, and that it's there always. It's always there. I know it and I believe in it, and I don't believe anything else. And because of that, the parent and the child believe in themselves. They can trust me because they believe in themselves as well. So as the framework, empathy intervention, we watch a short film, couple short films, we do an interactive activity, we anchor into what we're watching in the films, into what the children understand, right? So what does empathy mean? And having them go through and give examples, not just the children, everybody participates. If it's a difficult family, I participate, right? If I have a couple of kids, sometimes it's hard to get them all started. So you've got to lean into the family and know who to start with, who's going to lead the family, okay? So then critical thinking, we teach them critical thinking skills. Just like the beginning of this workshop today, we teach the entire family critical thinking skills. It's important how to think for themselves, how to communicate. We teach communication skills. We teach the family how to solve normal range problems. We meet the family's need wherever they are in the process, just starting out, already in the legal system, trying to iron out all the legal stuff so that the court understands what's happening so that judges can make informed decisions. The reason judges make bad decisions is because they don't have the facts or they don't know what's going on. They don't know what's happening. They don't understand. And it's our job to teach them. It's the mental health provider's job to provide a proper assessment and diagnosis and treatment plan for the judge. They're relying on you. Help them make the right decision to protect children. The judges they're not bad people. Lawyers, they're not bad people. Mental health providers, they're not bad people. You just need to be getting on the right path and doing the right things and doing it quickly. It doesn't need to take a lot of time. We need to respond quickly so that we can recover children and prevent this from happening. So it's a catalytic intervention that Dr. Childress calls it a catalytic intervention that's innovation. And I love that. I really appreciate Dr. Childress's support. When we started to collaborate in 2014, it was like the sky had parted for me as a practitioner and as a formerly alienated kid, as a targeted parent, as a step parent, as somebody who really is enmeshed in this family dynamic. It was like, oh, thank God, somebody inside of mental health knows what's happening. Oh my gosh, a process that's so simple. It's so easy. We don't need to make it so complicated. Stop making it complicated. Let's make it easy. It's easy, you guys. You can do this. All right. The high road is an entirely different approach. It's about education, right? It's about skill building. It's about whole family problem, whole family solution. It's about integration, not elimination. Okay. We do not want to eliminate the pathogenic parent. The child loves that parent. It's about rehabilitation, education, and integration. All right. Whole family problem, whole family solution. And we can use the model, the framework model of using all of the professionals to put the plan in place to do it quickly. There's no reason to keep kicking the can. So the high road, 8 easy steps. Remove mindset obstacles. It's what we're doing. We're removing the limiting beliefs that we as a professional community and that the family has that's preventing them from reuniting or from transitioning to a new family paradigm. This is done in higher purpose parenting prior to the workshop. We provide that class to families that are attending the workshop so that the parents can use this curriculum to start cleaning their container. When pathogenic parents go through higher purpose parenting, that program is to remove trauma. It's to help you remove your own trauma, the story you created about the trauma, right? So it's micro, macro trauma. They're transforming trauma. They're learning how to live in the new family paradigm. They're learning how to process and manage their unmanaged emotions. Okay, it's about re-education of parents through co-parenting skill building. All right, we want to teach parents how to be in relationship, even if it's a parallel relationship. Okay, we want to recover the authentic child in the child and in the parent. Okay, everybody has an authentic child that resides in them. All of us do. And oftentimes the pathogenic parent and the chosen parent, we're ignoring their authenticity. We're ignoring their authentic child. They're acting out in protest. A pathogenic parent is a grown-up child acting out in protest behavior. Okay, we want to protect the authentic child in the child. We want to recover them. Then we want to do that in the parents. Okay, whole family problem, whole family solution. We want to reestablish the attachment bond. Please, we've got to do this. We must repair this immediately. Ed Tronick, if you haven't watched this video, it's like on YouTube. And it's the breach and repair sequence. It's like 2.5 minutes. It's brilliant. It actually, in a 2.5 minute video, shows you what happens when there's a breach in a parent-child bond. Now, it's between a parent and a baby, but it's worse when it's older. We need to stop this. We need to repair these bonds immediately. And we need to restore normal range family interaction. We need to teach people how to interact with each other sooner rather than later, and integration into the new family paradigm. We need to teach parents how to transition into the new family paradigm, either preventatively, or we have to do it responding to the pathology that's already taken hold of the family. It's never too late. And then we teach them how to rejoice and reward a family celebration. After the high road, the family actually takes a trip and celebrates, right? But we celebrate all along the way. We want the parents and the children to learn the skills of appreciation. We teach this in the high road. There is nothing more rewarding than authentic appreciation, okay? This is a ninja skill we teach in the high road, and they don't graduate until they master it, okay? They master the skill of specificity around appreciation, all right? Appreciating the other person for a positive character trait that they see in the other person and how they've demonstrated it in their relationship. Powerful, you guys, powerful, simple, but powerful. And then the post-workshop handoff to maintenance care, or CAR, but maintenance care. This is the person who is the treating mental health provider, the family systems therapist. You guys could build a team in the solution focused model or the pilot program. Build a team, work together, solve this. You can solve this sooner rather than later. The high road is expensive. You know, it is, it's expensive. It's expensive. It's dangerous to work with you guys. It's dangerous to work with these families. Let's do this in your local community so that you can drive the cost down, right? You make it affordable and obtainable for all families. It is evidence-based. I want to share with you really quick that Dr. Childress took a child into the high road a few years ago, and we had gone to speak in the Netherlands, and I begged him, please take this kid. He's in LA, and I don't have a maintenance care provider. He's gone through all of the therapists. Nobody will work with this family, and they've been in the system for 3 years. Please, please. He's like, no, no, no. And then finally he said, fine. I guess I'm hard to say no to. And he said yes. And he took this belligerent child into his practice, and this kid put a rope around his mom's neck. The court had given custody to the mother, but no protective separation. And the child placed a rope around his mom's neck and said, I'm going to kill you if you make me continue to come on your parenting time. Frustrating, right? He didn't want, it's a sweet kid, but he had no other choice, right? He was being psychologically abused by a narcissistic parent, a diagnosed narcissistic parent. He'd been diagnosed and placed into CPS twice. They did nothing. Finally, the court responded and said, fine, I'll put the protective order in place. I had to facilitate this workshop in 2 days because I was speaking in the Netherlands. I recovered this child in 2 days. He was so severely alienated. He was punching his mom. He was physically violent and psychologically abusive. He had taken on the narrative of the father. Okay, I recovered him in 2 days. We were gone for a week. Dr. Childress brought him into his practice, and you can see that he was up and down and he stabilized. I want to read something that I got literally yesterday from the parent. Unexpectedly, the child posted this on his Instagram. This is the first time he has posted publicly about us, all his friends to see. This is huge. My middle son surprised us from Michigan, far left, and we all went up to spend the weekend with my oldest son, not going to say his name, far right. Remember, he was the one who brought the child to the high road and stayed with us the first night. What a wonderful tribute to all of us. We fought so hard for our son. And she sent me a picture that is of the Instagram, and I'm not going to show it here. Briefly, I'll show this picture. That was a couple years ago, all right? I get messages like this every day, but just ironically, or divine intervention, I got that from this child, this particular family last night before I was presenting here today, and I just wanted to bring that full circle for you guys. I apologize for getting emotional. See, I love these kids. We need to care about our families, okay? We need to show up with empathy and compassion, not just for the child, but for the child and both of the parents. We need to recover these families, and we must do it quickly. We can do it. We've done it in the high road over and over and over and over and over again. It's not complicated. If there are people on this call that can initiate a pilot program, come together and contact us. Let us do a pilot program with you. Please be the voice of change, be the solution-focused practitioners that bring the solution to your local communities. We can't be everywhere all of the time. So we must work together, the professionals. We can teach parents. We can teach them how to keep their children out of the middle. We can teach them to allow their child to love both parents and to receive love from both of their parents. We can teach them how to work on their own recovery. We've got to do it on our own. We have to work on our own recovery to teach our families. We can develop new communication skills. We can teach our families to do that. And we can create a new role as co-parents by leading by example as professionals in the community. So my final thought here is that of the pilot program, I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday. I'm happy to, and I know Dr. Childress is too, to bring this to your local community. We are thrilled to have so many people join us, and we're thrilled to bring solutions. And I am happy to stay on for as long as it takes to answer questions for you guys today. I know there's a bunch of questions, and if I didn't hit on something, I'm happy to talk about it now. But I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to share the solutions that we provide. I didn't get the chance to talk about Reunited. We do have a program. It's an online course for adult children. I'm happy to answer questions about adult children in the Q&A part. I was recovered as an adult child. I know that that is critical as well, and I'm happy to help wherever I can. So with that, I say thank you so much. It was an honor to share.
Thank you so much, Dorcy, and it was a privilege to listen to as well. It's quite emotional for you there. Obviously,
sorry about that.
No, why be sorry? I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. And there's an awful lot of people in the parental alienation world who are hurting, and the last thing they need to do is to be bottling up that pain and holding it in, because that just makes you ill. You got to get it out there, and I'm delighted that you shared your emotions with us today. And I think that was a fascinating speech, and you did deal with quite a number of our questions. I was going through them and ticking off the ones so I don't ask you them all over again.
Excellent.
The one, of course, about the voice of the child, and is it a voice of the child? We're actually hearing the authentic voice of the child, and the answer you've said is an unequivocal no. And should a 12-year-old be allowed to choose whether or not it's going to see one of its parents or not? And the answer again is an unequivocal no. So thank you for those answers. One question I suppose a lot of viewers would have: if we are in your neighborhood and we can pop in and undertake your program, well and good, and we would love to do it. And you get your pilot programs up all over the world. We'll all be delighted if you can achieve that. And hopefully there'll be some people here who will also get involved in that. But in the intervening period, there'd be a lot of parents like, I guess, your mom, who are currently in situations where they have a pathogenic other half who is parentally alienating the children from them. Typically, I don't know if it's the same in across the world, but certainly in Ireland and England, they try to protect the children by keeping the alienated parent away, because every time the kid sees the alienated parent, the kid goes crazy. So it's bad for the kid, right? So we got to keep the alienated parent at a distance. That's the theory. I don't agree with it. A lot of people don't. But if you are that alienated parent, and let's say you get to see your kid 2 days a month for 6 hours, during those 6 hours, and I'll come back to your emotional garbage bin, which I think is a wonderful concept in a moment. But during those 6 hours, what can you give us, like 3 or 4 bullet points? Do this, do this, do this, don't do that, don't do that, don't do this.
Yes. So
can I jump in for a second? Until we first protect the child, that becomes problematic. Now, from that perspective, this is child psychological abuse. We have to protect the child. I will now allow Dorcy to provide the answer.
Yeah. So in situations, because we are still in this quagmire of kids having to see a targeted parent or a chosen parent, sometimes supervised, which is unnatural, or during their parenting time, you want to make it easy. So the way you make it easy for the child is usually at transition time. The children are spinning, right? Let me just give you a visual. When the child is with the pathogenic parent, the child is a pathogenic parent's rubbish, emotional rubbish can, garbage can, right? So the parent is putting all their stuff into the child. The child is trying to manage, parent up to the pathogenic parent. And so all that stuff gets put on the child, usually the oldest child, but all of them, but we'll just say the child's taking it all into their container. So when they show up with the chosen parent, that's their safe parent. And oftentimes that parent is destabilized, so they're reactive or they're defensive. They're trying to, they're trying to defend themselves. No, I'm a good person. They're trying to explain away. That's the worst thing you can do. So stop defending yourself. And for the practitioners, if you're actually the one doing the therapy and stuff, be very cognizant of what's happening with the chosen parent, because if you're allying with the other parent through the child, you're actually piling on, and it's abusive to that parent. So the parent, if they're seeing the child, let the child empty, right? So oftentimes it's just, they say all these terrible things and whatever it is, and the parent wants to, don't react. It's not the child, and it's not true, especially if it's not true.
So let me stop you right there, because that's where you become the emotional garbage bin for your kids, as you described it. That's very hard for a parent who's already traumatized, missing their kids, feeling really hurt inside. And the next thing is the kid starts dumping on them. And I really don't like you, mom, or I don't like you, dad. How, and I can understand why you must be strong for your kid and all that kind of stuff. What kind of tricks can we employ to give us that strength, number one? And number two, you also suggested that when we get that pain dumped on us, we put it into a little Loctite, airtight bag and get rid of it. How do you do those two things? First, survive it. Second, put it in the bin.
All right. So what I said in the beginning about healing from your own emotional trauma, right? So in order for you to really hold the space of unconditional love, you really have to find that space for yourself. And if you're traumatized and you're getting re-traumatized, so you need to clean up your container. You need to clean up what I call your side of the mirror. What brought you into that relationship in the first place, right? What happened to you? What was your narrative? What's the story you believed that brought you into the relationship with a pathogenic parent in the first place and created a family and then separated, right? All of those little traumas or micro traumas, that's for the chosen parent to actually recover from. And let me just say something about this. How you do that, I mean, this is what I teach in Higher Purpose Parenting. It's a pretty extensive course, but quickly is to identify the trigger in you. So when you're triggered in the trauma, it's hard to do when you're in it because you're in your lizard brain, your cortisol and spin zone. But when you're not with the child, so those people that are here, or if you're working practitioners, help the parent identify the decision forming incidents. That's a moment in time when you experience something where you believe somebody else caused you pain, loss, or unconsciousness that's similar to the experience you're having with your kids. So usually rejection or whatever the story is. You need to clean up those triggers by identifying where they came from. Now, you don't have to identify them and then, go through all kinds of trauma therapy, but you might. I don't know. It depends on how big or small your micro trauma or macro trauma is. But you need to resolve that in your own process outside of your relationship and therapy with your kids. Because,
but notwithstanding that, regardless of what trauma the alienated or the selected chosen parent has suffered, if a kid that you love with all your heart turns around and say, "Oh, I really hate you," I mean, there's no mystery about why you feel pain. You don't need previous experience to teach you to understand that that's going to hurt. How do you just say, I understand how you feel that way and that's okay to feel like that? Or do you say that's inappropriate to speak to me like that?
You don't say any of those things. You can just simply not respond to allow the child to empty the container. So this is where you need to become ninja in cleaning up your side of the container. So when the child is emptying, if you're triggered, when you're triggered, that belongs to you. So when the child hurts you, that's your hurt, right? The child is emptying the container. So you have to almost think about it like this, that the child chose you to do the work. And if you're showing up and the child is triggering you, that's not the child, that's your trigger. The child is poking the parent to wake the parent up. And most parents, even out of this dynamic, kids are annoying because they're poking our buttons because they're trying to wake us up, even outside of this family dynamic. But as parents, we want to be, oh, I'm a parent and I know more, and how dare you? And it gets amplified in this family dynamic. So if you understand that the trigger belongs to you, and you can just, if you're triggered, you've got to detach from the situation and then reattach into the situation. Otherwise, you're going to react.
So by implication, therefore, when the child is saying how much they hate you, that's actually them telling you they love you so much that they're prepared to tell you that, so you can be the emotional garbage bin that they can, and effectively you're giving your kid therapy by allowing them do that?
Yeah, so I would ask myself, why am I choosing to have this experience? Where am I being hateful? Where do I hate myself? Where am I projecting hate into the world? The child is just mirroring something about yourself to wake you up, to shift that, how you're showing up in the world. It may not be in the family dynamic, maybe someplace else, right? Maybe your own internal self-talk, 99% of the time, it's how you feel about yourself. Your kids are just poking you about you. And they're just showing up to say, hey, dad, poke, poke, poke. Like, listen, this is rubbish. You're processing in what I call the lower self, the mind, the victim mindset, but both are operating at the same time, higher and lower self. Higher is your connection to source, God, your higher self, your unconditionally loving self, why you're here, right? And so, but we listen oftentimes, most of the time, with our lower self voice, our victim ears, because we like being victims, even though it feels shitty, right? It feels bad to be in our victim mindset, but we like it because it's what we know. It's what we learned. It's what we like.
The devil you know is better than the devil you don't know.
Yes.
I just want to finish up that question though, with the second part, which is, when you're garbage, when you've been the garbage bin all day long and you're up to here with it, and you're not reacting, and you're giving the child the therapy of allowing him or her to get out all of that rubbish they need to get out. How do you then put it into that zip bag and put it in the bin? What do you say?
Okay, before she begins, let me interrupt again to just say I agree with everything Dorcy Pruter said. Okay, and I think people can understand why I take her everywhere I go. So I agree with everything. So now she can answer the next question.
Okay. So I'm gonna get a little woo on you here, because it's required. So emptying your emotional can, you can do it all kinds of different ways. One of the ways I do it is I visualize where the rubbish is, as the trash bag, and I visualize like literally taking it out and dumping it into the trash can. I also am an energy person, so I visualize, I scan my body to see where I'm holding that energy in my body. Is it in my heart? Is my heart hurting because I'm hurt? Is it in my abdomen, my solar plexus, where I can, is it a poke at my power, right? Where am I holding it? I just visualize a bubble around it, and I pull that bubble of negative garbage I pull it through my right leg all the way down, and I visualize a cap on my foot, and I just visualize it all just leaving my body to be transmuted into something positive. And I look at everything that my child is saying as an opportunity to learn. Why am I choosing? Gives me my power back. I'm choosing the experience because I'm in charge. And there's something about this family dynamic that I've brought to the table that I need to heal from. So why am I choosing that? And then I look at my child with gratitude. If you look at the child, and then to go even further through the child to the other parent, and you look at them with gratitude to say, wow, this is a big opportunity for me to heal and grow. And I brought them into my story. It's my story. And they're bringing in this big, loud, noisy pain for me to transmute or transform and to heal. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to learn this one last time. And then go to your journal, not in the moment when you're with the child, but later, and write the negating truth. What is the truth, right? What's the story you have, and what's the truth? Most of the time, we beat ourselves up far, far worse than any of our children or our exes could do. We literally sit in a cesspool of self-loathing, and it happens in this family dynamic the most. And we get poked and we get completely destabilized, and then we react, right? Our trauma brain, right, wants to defend, react, and that's just not the authentic self. That's just the inner child, the lower self child, like protest, 3-year-old child that's throwing a tantrum that had unmet needs, right? So it's just showing up in the adult body. And the pathogenic parents swirl like that mostly. And so instead of nurturing and showing up with empathy, we actually show up and protest with them. So we're meeting protest with protest, and in the middle is the little child in protest. So we have 3 people in protest, and then everybody in the professional community is like, who's right? What do I do? What they're trying to feed the protest instead of
on the professional community. That was another one of our questions that I wanted to ask you to clarify a little bit for us. The area of prevention, early intervention, and the role of the child and family agencies.
The role, is that like child protective services or like CASCAF and things like that?
I mean, I guess they got to identify it. And is there a process through which they can go?
Let me start with this and then let Dorcy answer. From a psychologist perspective, we need to stand up and make the diagnosis of child abuse. And the child protective service agencies, I've worked with them. I came out of foster care and child abuse. I was clinical director for a big university project for foster care and child abuse. So I've worked with the CPS people. I've been on their treatment teams for physical, sexual, and neglect abuse. And now I'm in psychological abuse over here, which gives you an indication. I'm an abuse and trauma psychologist, and I'm here, which gives an indication what the pathology is. What the mental health people need to do is stand up and diagnose the pathology. The CPS, God love them, they're a lot of vicarious trauma. Their frontline people deal with a lot of severe nonsense. They're not trained for psychological child abuse. That's a very sophisticated kind of issue. That needs to come out of the psychologists. Physical, sexual, and neglect abuse are mandated reports. Psychological abuse is not. The psychologists need to know what they're doing and make an accurate diagnosis 100% of the time. And then once we make that diagnosis, I would recommend we make a permissible report into the CPS agencies that says, I'm seeing psychological child abuse, it's confirmed on my diagnosis. Now, if the CPS agencies start to use the same diagnostic checklist, the same information sets, the same knowledge, they come along, apply the same knowledge, and confirm the diagnosis. They don't need to make the diagnosis. They confirm a diagnosis coming into them from the psychologist. And I would suggest they don't look at allegations from parents. Oh, they're being psychologically abused. Very interesting. Go get a psychologist to diagnose it. And if it's there, the psychologist will refer into the CPS. CPS can train a few of their people up on psychological abuse to confirm the diagnosis. Now we have an independent psychologist and CPS taking their diagnoses to the court of psychological abuse. Now the court can rely on those. So that's the structural system of how to solve things. So now I'll let Dorcy answer from a more pragmatic things, because she's on the front lines dealing with this all the time.
So one of the things that I do, I mean, Dr. Childress is right. The child protective services, at least in the, I deal with them everywhere. They're just uneducated. They just don't know. And so if you have an opportunity to speak into that community, I would say get a packet of information together using the diagnostic indicator checklist, the parenting practices rating scale, and just the basic formula. You get all that. Dr. Childress, literally, he could die tomorrow, God forbid, and you could go to his website. You could go there right now as a practitioner and figure out, based on what he's published for free, how to fix this in your community. So you could download a bunch of stuff. There's so many resources there, and put a packet together and take that into child protective services. You're getting a lot of argument with like domestic violence and alienation is a way for abusers to abuse children. And what Dr. Childress has done is he's taken us out of that. It's like, listen, we protect all abused children all the time. We look at the symptoms of the child. Dr. Childress created an easy way to look at what's happening in the kid. What's happening? It's so easy.
Just on that one, if I can defer to Dr. Childress for a moment, I tried to look on your website when you mentioned this earlier, Dorcy, for the diagnostic checklist, and a search did not bring up any document. Whereabouts on the website are, first of all, am I on the right drcachildress.org?
Yes, and so I've organized it into areas. So I have a mental health area, I have an attorney area, I have a parent area.
I saw that,
I have a Dorcy area. The Dorcy
Yes, I
area
saw
is
that
over
too.
the attorney section and the mental health section.
Right.
Notice she's not in the parent section.
Okay.
She's over with the professionals. The parents will find her. The issue, but I want to say that speaks to my respect for her work, that she's over in the attorney and mental health section. Now, I put the forms over in the mental health section because that's where they belong.
I
They're
see.
mental health
Okay.
forms. So if you go over there, the first category is the ABPA forms. So that's
Okay.
where I recommend my protocol on things. Over in the
Okay.
parent section, I include reference lists. And so I would note those. So I include my reference list for ABPA. That's my personal reference list that I looked at. I've read all the stuff. That's the reference list for the foundations.
So we can put a link from our alienated.ie
And
website.
I also include references about psychological control and the dark triad personality that I also think are valuable. So those are the resources up on my website.
I want to say something about that, because we actually have recovered children that in the high road who have a dark triad parent. We've tagged timelines for dark triad. And I mean, I get.
Can you just give us an overview of a dark triad parent? What are they like?
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. That's a type of personality identified in the research literature on personality disorders pathology. So it's coming from a different field. It's coming from the personality disorder people, and it's coming from the research field. They've identified a personality type that has 3 dark traits. It's the classic dark triad is a narcissistic personality, psychopathic, so the psychopath pathology, and Machiavellian manipulation, high manipulation. So it's a narcissist, psychopath, and manipulation. They're very kind, and they list a lot of the research lists high conflict, absence of empathy, just all the revenge motivations. There's a variant of that called a vulnerable dark triad. That's the narcissistic, the borderline, and the Machiavellian manipulation. So the psychopathic drops out, the borderline comes in. And you can see that in the different flavors. When you have the psychopath, we have more of the IPV spousal abuse kind of domain, the intimate partner violence. When you switch it out for the borderline, you get more of the high anxiety, false allegations kind of things. So the dark triad, I think, is far more prevalent over here than we would anticipate. It leads to a darker thing. And then Dorcy was saying that she runs into it a lot out in the field.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Great. Sorry, Dorcy, I interrupted you there.
That's okay. So we actually see it in the data profile. So we have our first of many research papers coming out where I partnered with the university to bring research to the ABPA for the diagnostic symptoms that are tagged in the timelines. And we tag for everything. So we tag for domestic violence and, physical abuse and sexual abuse and all the little flavors in between. And what's come out of the research paper is the validity of the tagging process. So bonus for me, I actually did the research partnership to bring the research to the symptoms of the first paper is diagnostic symptom 1 and 2, and but all are present. And the third one, the encapsulated delusion, really is getting its own paper. And so to bring that to the table, we've tagged we've thousands and thousands of pieces of data that the patterns show up. And so the dark triad is frequent. We see it a lot, and we can recover those kids, and those kids can be in relationship with the dark triad as well. So people think, we gotta get rid of parents, and it's like so stupid. And I mean, talk about draconian.
These dark triad parental alienators would be, I guess, the type that might, for instance, make accusations about the other party sexually abusing their child, which are false, and then perhaps go around and tell everybody, all the other parents in the school, well, you know that, you know, what she does or what he does, and really mess up the other parent's life completely. When, let's say, you are the opposite side of the dark triad personality, you are the hero parent, the chosen parent, in that scenario where you can't walk down the street without people crossing the road because what Dr. Childress described as Machiavellian techniques have been employed to destroy you altogether. How do you cope with that?
That's a great
Do you
question.
defend yourself?
No. Yes. Depends where you are. So yes, you legally defend yourself, and I wouldn't do it without a custody resolution method or somebody who is a baller in that industry. You need a expert in allegations of sexual abuse, especially false allegations. Do not go into the court because you're usually dealing with criminal and family court, and they don't necessarily communicate. And you need to sort out the data to make sure that you have your facts clear and your evidence is presentable in a way that clears your name. In the community, listen, the pathology wants you to react. The pathology, I'll explain it in simple terms. I feel like it's like an alien, which I think is funny. It's called alienation, right? It's like an amoeba. An alienation has like landed in the brain of the pathogenic parent, and it's like cutting off the certain brain centers in the brain. And then because we have these mirroring neurons, we get in relationship with those people and we start mirroring stuff back and forth, right? And then all of a sudden we might show up with like pathology, and they want us to react. So in the community, as a chosen parent, you need to show up differently. So what we teach is how to be the soft place to land for your kid. You don't want to show up in conflict at the baseball game, but you better show up at the baseball game unless there's a protective order. So, you know, always show up. Go, 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 because your child needs to see you there. Your child chose you. And if you don't show up, they're going to flip the narrative at some point, and they're going to believe you abandoned them because there might be an abandonment line in your family pathology, right? So you want to show up for the child. It doesn't matter. This happened to me. I was raised by the Machiavellian, the dark triad. And this not only was my father the target, but I was also the target. So, you know, my mother has literally alienated me from our entire community, our entire family system. Like I am a pariah before I did this work, right? So I know what it's like to be in that family dynamic. And if you try to fight, you're only bringing it out more. So you disengage, right? To engage is to enrage the pathology. So don't enrage the pathology. And you show up with empathy, right? Empathy for yourself. This is again where you have to clean up your side of the mirror. You've got to, why did I choose the experience? You know, why did I choose my mother and my father? I mean, I could get very philosophical here. And, you know, I came into this family for this reason, to be here today with you guys to say, hey, I get it. I've been there, and we need to stop doing stuff this way. We got to fix it. And here's how we do it. Right. And it's not about fighting. We have to stop fighting. So defending yourself is fighting. Now, there's a time and a place for that in a legal structure, and you hire the right people to help you do that. But in the family, if you go to defend yourself, you're actually just activating the dark triad pathology and making it worse.
So let me talk a little bit about what the legal and flip side, the professional side of that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved, court ordered on one and not on the other. 2 cases involving false allegations of sexual abuse. The court ordered one, I was ordered to conduct a clinical assessment of the situation. I conducted 2 assessment sessions, 90 minutes each, one with the pathological mother, one with the child. And I conducted those with, it was court ordered. So there was a court reporter present in the interview with the pathological parent. The attorney for the parent was present. And I conducted a mental status exam of thought and perception because I'm looking for a delusion. So I have the court reporter transcript of a mental status exam of thought and perception with the parent that I could then take into the court and say, here's the delusional disorder, here's where it is, here's how it shows up. If I'm ever asked to do an assessment, personally, I always would like a court reporter or at least a transcript of it because it's so useful. It's a structured approach. The second case, same thing. This time I watched a deposition conducted by the attorney. I instructed the attorney a little bit on the lines of questions relative to delusion and assessing delusions. The attorney did that during the deposition. I watched. The attorney pulled out the delusion. The attorney pulled out the denial. The attorney pulled out even the dissociative state during the deposition. So we can identify the pathology. The false allegations are coming from the borderline variant. Now, the borderline, I don't like that term. It's sexual abuse. It's a victim of sexual abuse now, all grown up. So we're double pathologizing. But that variant has the high degree of sexual abuse allegations and anxiety. And the term borderline was developed in the 1930s because they're on the borderline between neurotic and psychotic. So we know they collapse into the delusional belief systems. And that's what's happening. It's getting re-triggered from their own child abuse, and now they're getting false allegations coming in. The solution for that is a mental status exam of thought and perception. We can pull out, we don't diagnose delusions based on history. We pull them out in the clinical interview, and I can look at them. I can rate the features of them. I can rate them on a brief psychiatric rating scale. I can rate them on the positive and negative symptom scale, the PANS. So we can rate them. Because we know I can look at all the features of it. And then I put it back in, close the person up and send them on their way. And oftentimes they don't even know I've looked at their delusion because they're delusional. I just pop it out and look at it and put it back in and send them on their way. So that's the assessment for the false allegations. We need to pull it, but we can't do that if we're using parental alienation. We can use it when we can do that when we're looking at delusions and applying established knowledge.
Let me get to
what Dorcy's saying about the professional side is there, and then what Dorcy is saying about the practical side of the parents on how to respond is also accurate.
And taking that to the next level, Dorcy, perhaps this one might be for you. These are some of we have hundreds and hundreds of questions that have come in, but having grouped them as best we can, one that it comes in various shapes and sizes, but is definitely recurring, is can reunification work if the alienating parent doesn't want it to?
Yes, that is a great question. I was hoping somebody would ask that. I forgot to mention it. Yes, because what we do that sets us apart from literally everybody else on the planet is we focus on teaching the child the skills to be in relationship with both parents, even when one and sometimes both parents are pathogenic. These are the parents. So sometimes the pathogenic parent refuses to get on board. They don't want to learn the skills, and they litigate and they do all kinds of things. First, we protect and we recover, right? The child, we resurface the bond, we reintegrate with the chosen parent, we rehabilitate and reintegrate with the other parent. If the other parent doesn't rehabilitate, we reintegrate in a controlled environment. The goal is to not put the child back in an environment where they're going to be re-abused. The goal is to put the child in an environment where they're protected from the abuse. Some children can withstand the abuse once they learn the skills, and there's enough time that they master the skills. They don't succumb to the pressure or fall, I hate to use the word victim, I can't stand that word. They don't fall prey to the pathology of the other parent. They've learned to wire their brain, right, by learning the skills to resist the pathology. Some children can't. So some kids can't leave a controlled environment of parenting because maybe it is a Machiavellian parent who refuses to stop. But I'll tell you what, that I read that little did you hear boy, Dr. Childress? Listen, that dad in that case was really, really pathogenic. And I mean, kissing the son on the mouth, and it was crazy, crazy stuff. And this child goes back and forth. He sees both of his parents.
On that case, there were 3 separate mental health people prior to me had all diagnosed child psychological abuse. One of them said it was the worst case of a narcissistic parent they had seen in 40 years of practice. We had 3 separate psychological child abuse diagnoses from the mental health people coming into Dorcy's program. 2 days, she completely recovered the child. I received the maintenance care. I looked at the child. I kind of did my assessment of how the child's doing. She
So
got
this
a
is the guy that she talked you into taking in the Netherlands. Is that the
Yes.
case?
Well, he's here, but we were in the Netherlands. And I'm like,
that's yeah.
We
That's
had-
what
we-
she could only do 2 days because she had to leave early, and so she
Yeah.
only had 2 days. So she adapted her workshop and recovered the kid in 2 days, and then I took him afterwards. She got a complete recovery.
Fantastic result. We have another question just on the whole issue of the severe cases of parental alienation, for instance. How successful is temporary reversed custody order in severe cases of parental alienation? I hasten to add that typically on this side of the world, if you say you want to take a child out of an alienating parent's world and put them with a chosen parent, it's most unlikely to happen unless
Okay,
it's physical abuse.
So let me answer that. So is it also typical in your part of the world when you diagnose that the parent is incestuously sexually abusing a child, that it's controversial to take the child away from a sexually abusing parent? When you diagnose some child being beaten by electrical cords, is it controversial to take the child away from a physically abusive parent? There are 4 diagnoses of child abuse in the DSM-5.
And we went through this yesterday, yeah.
Physical, sexual, neglect, psychological. Psychological is abuse. We need that diagnosis. There is no justification for taking a child away from a parent if there is no child abuse. So we will not do that ever if there is no child abuse. That's why we need the diagnosis from the mental health people. We need a confirmed diagnosis. We need a clear diagnosis, because if there's no diagnosis, parents have the right to parent according to their cultural values, their personal values, and their religious values. So that's the issue
Yeah,
about reframing that question.
I agree
Let me say
100%. Dorsey mentioned earlier that, we only stopped sexual abuse of kids 40 years ago. We only stopped hitting kids 25 years ago. And we're at a new precipice. We got to get over it somehow. And I think what you're saying there is what you're saying is extremely important, that people realize
I know that
psychological abuse is actually as harmful.
I know that.
Yeah.
Every single
Let me say something.
Every single mental health professional has duty to protect obligations as a doctor. So I don't care what everybody else says. Every single psychologist has duty to protect obligations and obligations to conduct a proper risk assessment for psychological child abuse. So while the attorneys and everybody else argues, I'm a trauma psychologist out of child abuse. I'm here because this is child abuse, and people have to realize that. That's why Dr. Childress is here. You look at my vita, I'm not a court person. I'm here because this is child abuse. So if you stop thinking about parental alienation, you will find the solution. Now, Dorcy can offer you all the other great, wonderful things, but I want to correct that initial framing of the question. So now, Dorcy, your turn.
Let me just say this. It is not draconian, even though that's the legal argument that a lot of lawyers like to use to say, no, we can't do this, and it harms the children. It doesn't harm the children. Children go to summer camp. Some in England, they send kids off to live in boarding school to go to school a lot of times. So it's just garbage. It's a lie that people want you to believe so that the abusive parent can hold tight fastly to the child, because the moment you release the child from the pathology, right, there's an opportunity to recover the child. Now, when you place the child with the other parent, if there is no intervention, you are potentially harming the child and the parent because they don't have any skills. So oftentimes the courts will, that's what happened to the little boy I was just sharing with you. They're like, all right, fine, mom, you've been fighting for 3 years, you can have him. But they didn't put a protective separation in place. So the dad just continued to abuse the kid who then was abusing the mom. He could have easily have murdered the mom. So the protective separation is critical because we have to free the child from the pathology. If we leave the child in the psychological battleground, like Dr. Childress says, then the child is being psychologically abused, right? So we have to free the child by protecting the child. Now, if there isn't a diagnosis of child abuse, but the symptoms are there, and we have mental health providers who won't get on board, because we deal with that everywhere. You know, we have people digging in their heels. Like, I mean, I get it. People have been in the mental health field for a long time, and nobody wants to admit that what they've been doing harms people. Nobody wants to admit that. I get it. Why would you, right? So when you bring that to the surface, people dig in their heels, right? Like, no, I'm going to continue to do it this way. Denial, pathology, right? It's important that we keep pushing that forward. So if we don't have a protective separation, we deal with incompetency everywhere. It's unfortunate, but it's just true. So we have the ABA single case design, which Dr. Childress, you know, I didn't go to college, so I'm not a researcher. I'm just a doer. I'm like, where's the problem? Here's the solution. Here are the 10 things we need to do to solve this. Let's just get it done. It's just how I've always been. So Dr. Childress rolled out this ABA single case design. I didn't realize when he gave me that was an actual research like methodology. I'm like, oh my God, this ABA thing is like brilliant. What he did was he took a established like construct of research, and he plugged in what we do. So he said, listen, court, judge, you can make a child protection decision without a mental health diagnosis. So in family court, since this is where we are, this is the world we play in, right? If you have a family and the pathology is there, but we don't have a mental health provider diagnosing, the judge can implement a ABA single case design. The judge can say, I'm going to order a temporary order. A is where the family has been for however long. This isn't working. The therapy is not working. Whatever we're doing over here, the child is not getting better. So A, it's where we are. B, we're going to implement a protective separation. We're going to augment treatment with a high road or something like it, right? We're going to do a high road, and then we're going to put the child back into family systems therapy, and we're going to implement the contingent visitation schedule, which Dr. Childress created, which is an if this then that kind of visitation. It keeps people towing the line. It's what I was talking about earlier with a plan. You know, if there's a plan, then they can follow a plan that has consequences, right? So we reintegrate like that.
Back to the situation where there's a parental alienation case going on in court. And one of the issues, and this is one of the questions that's come in, which I think is relevant to what you were just talking about there, which is the situation where the perpetrator of domestic abuse alleges that the other parent is the alienator of the child to deflect from their own abuse. And this apparently is quite a common theme throughout parental alienation. In fact, somebody once told me that if you a narcissist's diary is the accusations they make against you.
So here's
projection.
The answer to that. Here's the answer to that, because that's a diagnostic question of whether or not there's the shared persecutory delusion present. Now, the question you say, so the alienator, the one being accused of doing the alienation, is not doing it. So there's no delusion in that parent. There is no persecutory delusion. When I conduct a mental status exam, I'm not looking at content. I'm looking at the process by which decisions are made. When I do my mental status exam of thought and perception, there will be no delusional disorder in that parent. In addition, the 3 diagnostic indicators will not be there. The child will not show a suppression of attachment bonding motivations towards the targeted parent. In this case, the pathological parent. When you see it, the child will want to bond to that parent, but there are barriers. If we could remove the barriers, we will get bonding, because so symptom 1 won't be there. The child will not display 5 narcissistic personality traits towards the targeted parent because they're abusive. The children do not become haughty and arrogant towards an abusive parent. Children do not show entitlement towards an abusive parent. You don't see splitting. Because that's a neurological, so you won't see those symptoms. So diagnostic indicator 2 will not be present. And 3, the child will not have a persecutory delusion because it will have a reality base to it. So you will not find diagnostic indicator 3. So though all three of those diagnostic indicators have to be present, they will always be present. It's a delusion, they all go together. If they're not present, then the pathology is not present. I have stopped or not accepted cases in several where the pathological parent was the one claiming to be the targeted one. And I get them in and I say, no, you're the narcissist, or in one case, it was a little bit of an autistic spectrum. And so they didn't have insight into how they were creating the issues with the child, but the child was normal range. And so I had normal range attachment bonding motivations, no personality pathology in the child, and no delusional disorder in the child. And the delusional disorder is key because it can be assessed by a mental status exam of thought and perception. So that's the diagnostic.
So in essence, that what you said in layman's words is that, I suppose, if a child has the confidence to be rude and haughty with one of its parents, that it can't be intimidated by that parent, and therefore that parent can't be the
that's one feature, and that's a clear feature. I work foster care. I've never seen a kid who's been beaten or abused or in danger or threat by a parent go up and start demanding and making, no, that child's real compliant.
So when your kid is mean and nasty to you, it means he must love you.
It means they're not afraid of you. It means they're not.
Another question, if I can, because we're running out of time here and there's so many to try and get through. And
let me just address that. I think Dorcy and I are willing to stay till all questions are answered. So if we run out of time here, set us up some future.
Well, now be very careful, because you might just be back in that chair again very soon indeed, I can tell you.
This is important.
Ken, I want to say something.
Okay, go ahead, Dorcy.
Let me say something. It is fair to assume that your child loves you, period. However your child is showing up, your child loves you. Your child has never stopped loving you. If your child is a turd, if they're mean and they're rejecting, it doesn't matter. That's protest behavior. They love you. It never stops. So it is safe to assume with 100% certainty that your child loves you. And I made false allegations against my dad. I said the worst things you could possibly say. I made the decision at 12 years old to stop seeing my dad. I was haughty and arrogant. My family was completely split. And I can assure you that I never stopped loving my dad, despite how I showed up and despite what I said. It wasn't true. And
well, I tell you what, if there's alienated parents watching out there, you have given them a great deal of hope with those few words. Thank you for that, Dorcy. Really important to hear. I want to try and rattle through these questions as quickly as possible. This is one I'm not quite sure which one of you might best answer. It's what's the threshold when shared custody is not in the best interests of the child and the child should be removed from the alienating parent, the child abuser?
Well,
where do you draw the line?
I would say the threshold is child abuse. In the absence of child abuse, parents have the right to parent according to their cultural values, their personal values, and their religious values. We do not use removing of a parent or removing of a parent from a child's life as any sort of treatment model. It is a protective separation for child abuse. That's what it's used for. Then we want to keep it as small as possible. And that's where Dorcy comes in, teaching everybody the skills, getting the child to learn the skills of resilience. That's mom and dad for a lifetime. We have to get the child, but we don't want to do that while one parent's trying to keep the child pathological and we're trying to make the child healthy, and we're going to rip the child apart. So we need a period of protective separation where we can come in, recover the child, separate from all the other stuff, and then we restore with the pathological parent. And we do that in a way that, as Dorcy's saying, it's a whole family solution, and it takes the child out of the middle and all of that.
Again, though, we will have difficulty, and another question here relates to that with regards to separating the child in circumstances where, for instance, this questioner explains that in the north of Ireland, they hear so many parents and officers of the children's court saying the child just won't go and we can't make them go against their will. It's the child's wishes and feelings which are fundamental. We know how important it is for children to have good relations with both parents, even both parents are encouraging. How can the logjam with the child be cracked? What practical solutions are there? Dorcy.
So
Over to you.
easy. First of all, diagnose, use the assessment, diagnose what's going on, protect the child, place the child, fix the relationship. We always fix the relationship that's breached. So the role is we will fix this relationship, and the court needs to step up. The court needs to say, I'm in charge of this family right now. This is the rule of the land. These are the orders, and this is what's going to happen. And then the team comes together and they recover the child. And it starts with the breached relationship. And we explain to kids, listen, you may not, is that me? Oh, sorry. It's my
They've
kid.
given up sending
My
me
kid.
questions. They're just contacting you directly
So,
now.
I know, that's my kid. She must have something exciting to share with me. They fix it. The court needs to take authority, and the court needs to tell the child, this is the rule of the land. So we're going to repair this relationship first, and then this relationship. It's not normal for kids to reject parents. It just isn't.
Let me jump in for a second, because I used to work juvenile justice. Okay, and now wasn't intense, but it was close. I have kids in juvenile detention back before entering this pathology. Over in juvenile justice, can you imagine the court saying, what can we do? We can't make the child be on probation. The child doesn't want to go with probation. Well, the child doesn't want to. Are you kidding me? No. And as a therapist, I want the courts to enforce their court orders, because I'm trying to teach the child responsibility. If the child can violate a court order willy-nilly, then I can't teach the child the responsibility. They need to follow court orders. And if the court delivers an order to a child and the child's not following it, I'm considering parental neglect on that one.
If the child says, I don't want
to follow court orders, that's parental neglect.
And if the child says, I don't want to go to school, do you say, oh, well,
the child doesn't? Yeah, that's the illogic of the delusion, that we keep bringing that type of stuff up. The child says that, yes, that's absolutely true. And specifically at court orders. I mean, seriously, I don't care if you disagree with the court orders. I could disagree with the court orders. The court orders are there. You have to follow them. And that's a good thing to teach the child. And if I've got a parent who's got primary custody of the child, or the child says they're bonded to, and the child's not learning that, that's neglect.
I've had this out with a judge, a high court judge before, and the judge said, well, if the mother or the father doesn't bring the kid for access, what do you want me to do? Put them in jail? Put the parent of the child in jail?
Now here's the other thing, because you don't have a diagnosis. If you got a child abuse diagnosis out of mental health, and the parent, then the court has the clear indication. Now, if the court's trying to figure out what the issue is it mom? Is it dad? I don't know. It should be the court's trying to make treatment decisions because the mental health people have failed. We need to get the court the proper, is there child abuse? Yes or no? And if so, by which parent? That information needs to get to the court as evidence. Over in healthcare, we need to step up and do our jobs in order to do that for the court.
Another question, is it true that a child who returns to the environment of alienation cannot make any real progress to reconcile with a targeted parent?
No, protective separation, we recover the child, and then absolutely everything's good to go. There might be relapses. We want the outcome measure on it, but everything Dorcy talks about is absolutely 100% true and correct. It's a skill building, it's skill instruction, it's not psychotherapy as we would traditionally think about it, but it is more along the cognitive behavioral lines, but it's more expansive than that. But that what she's saying is absolutely correct, and we teach the child the resilience skills to manage both parents. And a lot of times she's right, we have both pathological parents. We still fix it. We can fix it with everything.
Sometimes I've done high roads where I have two pathogenic parents. It happens. And those are tough. I mean, but there's no judgment, right? I think one of the things that really, I don't know, I'll just toot my own horn for a second. And that really sets me apart is like, listen, it is what it is. Sometimes parents are shitty. They just are. And sometimes they're pathogenic. And, it may not be their fault how they became pathogenic. It is a responsibility to learn the skills to eliminate the pathology or to alleviate the pathology in the family. So, it's not my job to judge. It's my job to help the family learn the skills. And I really, they drive me nuts sometimes. Sometimes the parents are crazy. They do crazy stuff. I'm like, why are you doing that? Chosen parents do it all the time. And, but it's not for me to judge. It's for me to say, listen, if you do it this way, this is the result. If you do it that way, this will be the result. Can kids get reinfected by pathology? Yes. Listen, whatever you believe to be true is true. So I believe that if you learn the skills and your kids learn the skills, that they can resist the pathology. If you fight against me in your belief system that the kid's just going to get reinfected and the other parent's not going to do, and if that's your belief system, you're not going to be a candidate for working with me, because you and I are working, our belief systems are working against each other. I believe in you. You have to believe in you. You have to do the work. Your kids will learn the skills. Your kids will follow your lead. When I do high road, it's easy to recover the kids. The kids are like a walk in the park. They're so easy. You know who's hard? The parents. The parents are so hard.
Just on the parents, we actually brought in new legislation in Ireland in 2019, coercive control legislation, which can't really be enforced properly because it's designed to protect a spouse from another spouse. And if the kid is the victim, well, then it's inapplicable.
Yep.
But where does the role of
Hold on, Dr. Childress.
Wait. That's the wrong.
I just want to ask about domestic violence. Where does that cross the line here?
That's the wrong framing of the question. This is spousal abuse. It's spousal abuse using the child as a weapon. So to say
is it domestic violence?
Is wrong. It's domestic violence. It's intimate partner violence. That is the correct term for domestic violence. Intimate partner violence, IPV. There's two types, situational and terrorist. That we're worried about the terrorist version. To say this is not domestic violence is incorrect. This is IPV spousal abuse using the child as a weapon. That's the fundamental feature of the pathology. In using the child and weaponizing the child, they create such pathology in the child that becomes psychological child abuse. But the underlying motivation on this is on the domestic violence line. So it's incorrect to frame that question to say this is different than domestic violence. No, it is part of the domestic violence. So all those other people who are on the opposite side of parental alienation talking about, domestic violence stuff, we're actually part of that. We actually agree with them and say, yes, this is an expanded version of domestic violence using the child as a weapon.
Yeah. And to all of those people, Dr. Childress, who will claim such things as, there is no such thing as parental alienation. There may not be something that falls neatly under that title, but would you give it another description that might be a definite this exists?
I would agree with them. There is no such thing as parental alienation. There is such a thing as a shared persecutory delusion, ICD-10-F24. There is such a thing as thought disorders, persecutory delusions. There is such a thing as a cross-generational coalition and emotional cutoff. And so these there is attachment pathology. There is the attachments. So these things all exist. And that's what we need to start doing, is relying on stuff that exists, because once we do, the diagnosis is psychological child abuse. The diagnosis is also spousal or partner abuse psychological. That's 995.82 of the DSM-5. So when I give both diagnoses, so I emphasize the child abuse diagnosis because this is about protecting the child and we need the protective separation. And I'm not as worried about the spousal abuse component. If we can get the child out of it, then the spousal abuse stops. But so
do you have on your website, which I think would be very helpful to a lot of people, because I know there's been great concern everywhere, what is the definition for parental alienation? But you've just effectively given us one there that we could apply. It's DCM-1 whatever, and list them.
ICD-10, I gave that yesterday. ICD-10-F24, shared persecutory delusion.
Can we find this on your website?
The American Psychiatric Association describes it. You can find that on my website, the description.
Will we find it under parental alienation though, or what should we look up?
I don't use the term, so no, you can look it up in the ICD-10. You can look it up in the DSM-5, independent of my website. The quote is from the American Psychiatric Association that says it often occurs in family situations where the children adopt the delusions of the parent. And so you can talk to all psychologists about what ICD-10-F24 and a shared delusion is. You don't have to get it from my website. It's like a standard diagnosis, delusional disorders and thought disorders. That's what it is, a shared persecutory delusion. That's a diagnosable thing in mental health with a mental status exam of thought and perception that looks and assesses for delusions. Now, it's a hard assessment to do, and it takes some training to do the mental status exam of thought and perception, but it's doable. And the people who know it are the people in schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, not over in court-involved stuff. But I got that training from 12 years working with schizophrenia, but that's what needs to be imported. You can go out and get consultants from the schizophrenia world to do that or figure it out.
It might be difficult for everyone, though, to find someone of your level of expertise. So if we can refer them to the list of the specific
I don't know why that is. I don't know why the psychologists are capable of being psychologists and doing stuff for you. So if I'm the only psychologist on the planet that can diagnose a delusional disorder, I guess that's the case. I don't believe that. I believe the other psychologists simply aren't doing it. They're not applying the knowledge. They're not stepping up. They're just lazy or ignorant, or I'll let them describe why they're not doing it. But every single doctor, every single psychologist should and is required to make an accurate diagnosis of psychological child abuse when it's warranted, which is
listen, you got to simplify it in this space. Go to Dr. Childress's website, click on the mental health tab, download his little framework for assessment, and educate yourself. Go to Amazon and buy all of his books. The foundations, it's big. Buy the little ones. There's a whole bunch of them. I have, all of his little books. Buy them and study. Like, do your homework. And honestly, we can tell what's happening in the family from the data. Like, I can tell you with 100% certainty that this is happening in the family. If I can do it, you can do it as a mental health provider. Now, I'm not a mental health provider, so I can't diagnose, but the data speaks for itself and it doesn't lie. So the historical data in a family speaks for itself, and we tag for all of it. So we don't just do the child symptoms. We start there and we move out. We look at all the pathology. We look at all the forms of abuse. We look at domestic violence. We're trained in determining domestic violence, physical violence, emotional violence, all of it's domestic violence, right? All of it's abuse. We look at all of it. So if we can do it, you can do it too. It's not that hard. It just takes time. And for the mental health providers in this space, don't overcomplicate it. Like, literally get the checklist, follow his assessment process, and assess the family. Provide the court with a diagnosis. Like, literally, if the child is experiencing this, fix it.
We're just out of time, Dr. Childress, but please.
Let me expand on that, because Dorcy said go to my website. I will tell all the mental health people, I am a stopgap. I'm getting you from one place to the other. Actually, you should go to John Bowlby, read his 3 volumes. You should read Bowen, his family evaluations. You should read Mnuchin. You should read all the personality disorder. Nothing absolves you from your responsibilities to know what you're doing under standards 2.01, 2.04, 9.01, and 2.03, maintaining competence. The stuff I'm talking about is from the 1970s and 80s and 90s. Ed Tronick, you need to know him, and the breach and repair sequence. There is no excuse for lazy and ignorance. We're working with children in the courts. So the mental health people, you can come to my website and get my stuff, and I've done it all for you and kind of made it simple, but I'm still a stopgap. You need to go to the actual knowledge and learn it.
But as we described you yesterday, you can be the conduit, and your website is where they can find it.
Exactly.
So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. I'm going to have to wrap up. We did have 2 filmed interviews for the conference over the past 2 days, neither of which we've had time to put in because it's just been so intense. So what we're going to do is Dorcy and Dr. Childress have both kindly agreed that they are going to comment on those for us, and we're going to provide them to them, and we're going to have those up for you on the website by the 1st of July, all going well. So we'll look forward to that with the commentary. The other thing is, we wanted to say a special thank you to everyone who made a donation. We are a voluntary organization. Dr. Childress and Dorcy have both donated their time as well today, but we do have expenses. So if you would care to make a pledge, our website, our email address is info@alienated.ie. We'll get back to you then and organize a safe transfer of whatever amount of funds you have. Every little bit helps. Recordings of both the day's sessions will be available on the website, which, as you know already, is alienated.ie. A special thank you for joining us today and for helping us navigate this difficult path to solutions to find the real problems of parental alienation, to obviously Dr. Childress and to Dorcy Pruter, who kindly given their time, as I said, as a donation. I'd also like to thank the Alienated Children First team who pulled the whole thing together. I have absolutely no idea how. I am merely the mouthpiece. I'm their little marionette here. They're the guys with all the strings doing all the hard work and pulling it behind the scenes. The alienation, the parent, it's a parent-led group. They offer support for parents going through it. We get support as well from our colleagues in the UK, like Good Egg Safety, who produced a great survey on 4,000 parents, which is available as well. FNF, Both Parents Matter, the Dolce Vita project in the north of Ireland. The list goes on and on and on. Thank you to all of you, and thank you for all to whom the child's best interests and innocence and pure smile and lie deeply within the heart of most of the people I've come across in this area. And I know I'm talking to nobody that doesn't feel that way now. We're doing everything that we do for the kids. So thank you to everyone who helps to save our kids from all forms of harm. On behalf of Alienated Children First, alienated.ie, I'm Ken Joyce. Thank you and good night. See you later, guys.
Goodbye. Thank you.
That was great.